What's up, everybody? This is Garrick with ACG, and I'm here with Johnny today for the Best Gaming Podcast number 502. Welcome
Boom.
aboard. Welcome aboard. Welcome aboard, Johnny. This is your first time here. Appreciate you showing up,
Yeah,
taking your time out of your busy YouTuber life to come here with this little
definitely.
podcast and talk
Yeah, I
about
had to
games.
stop 3 or 4 other very important things, but
Yeah,
you know,
yeah. I appreciate you doing it. I appreciate you taking the time, stepping out on your other job, on your primary job. How is the channel going, by the way?
it's going pretty well. I already got the first monetization step on the League channel,
Mm-hmm.
and there's another step where I can actually get ad revenue. So I need to hit 1,000 subs there. So I hit 500 subs, and the views are a lot higher than the sub count. The sub count has just been tricky to get because people don't really sub
Yeah.
nowadays. They just sort of watch your video and get it in the home screen, you know.
Yeah. The home
But
screen.
it's going well, man.
Home
Yeah.
screen takes care of some of it now, but the algorithms and the way everything works is just difficult. And then, of course, they tried to make it harder. YouTube tried to make it harder on everybody. But I mean, they upped. I still remember Go Burns when he was on the podcast. He was getting ready to be monetized at the time, and they turned around and adjust the monetization, and it was way higher.
Yeah.
So like
Yeah, they
everybody was
changed.
sitting there, they were right there at the cusp, and they're all, you know what, we don't want to pay you, which is weird to me because I mean, you would think that if you are paying even a little bit, it's building into the consumer base itself, and people are just going to want to be there and want to create more stuff if they're getting some kind of return instead of just
Yeah.
boiling over for that weird ass like platinum in a game, the platinum game of YouTube that somehow changes in what it is. I asked everybody what they were playing prior to starting. Plague Tale, Requiem, Stellar Blade, Wukong, Returnal. Started a second playthrough of BG3 with my partner. That's cool. That's cool. A lot of people
Stellar
getting
Blade
double plays.
enjoyer. I see you, buddy. I see you. Good man.
You're seen on
Or
this podcast.
lady.
Yeah. Before we begin and dive deep in, everybody, go tweet this out, Facebook it out, tell your friends, smoke signals, whatever you need to do. Light speed interstellar travel information. Inform
Pigeons?
the universe. Pigeons.
No,
Pigeons
what's
would be fine.
the Ravens? That's the one from Game of Thrones. Send a raven.
Ravens are highly intelligent, but pigeons are insanely good,
Yeah.
man. If you ever follow some of the
Is
science
any of
about
that
them.
real? The fact that you could like send messages reliably through Raven?
Through Raven, they would have to be trained in a different way than pigeons, but I absolutely would assume almost any flocking bird like that could be trained in some way.
Really?
The thing is ravens, crows, a lot of the birds are really highly intelligent, and I feel it's a little bit like the difference between a camel and a horse, where camels they're robust, all this stuff, but they're really finicky. They're bastards, and they're really smart. And so if you talk to anybody like a Moodski from the Middle East was talking about camels multiple times, he's like, listen, dude, they're just dickheads. Like they're just absolute dickheads, and they're smart. So the ability to get them to do something versus a horse, I think that's the way you look at some of the different bird types. Just like some dog types, right? You have 1,000 dog breeds, and some dog breeds can't be trained to do or are very difficult to train in retrieving, but they'll grab a ball. We have a dog that grabs the ball, will leap at a ball, but the moment he gets it, that reward center is done. There is no returning. He doesn't even know what returning is. In fact, he will never return anything in the yard. He wants it to come from behind you. It's a very, it's just a specific type of animal. You're going to get a dog someday, dude, and we're going to be able to have these discussions. We're going to be able to sit down. We'll have dog cam.
Right.
Like I said, we're going to do the super chats one day for dog cam.
No, maybe we'll switch. Like someday I'll be a dog guy and you'll be a cat person. Like we'll actually. No. Yeah, all right.
I don't mind cats at all. We've just had some unlucky times with cats.
Yeah.
So this week news has been pretty crazy, man. Yesterday they had that Xbox event. What did you think of the Xbox event?
I only saw bits and pieces, like highlights and stuff. But I was very impressed with the Doom gameplay. I know we're going to talk about it. I love the idea of like standing your ground versus jumping up or running as much. And then the stuff they showed with the mech and all that, I thought was very exciting.
That will be interesting for us to discuss because I have my misgivings. I have my
Okay.
misgivings. I guess we could talk about it first, actually. Well, first, let's discuss what we've been playing because we asked chat, have you been playing anything unique or has it been mostly the same stuff?
Yeah, actually, I played more of that game we talked about, the first Berserker. Played more of that. I did actually a video for the demo itself, and it became a lot more interesting the more I played, because that game has basically 3 weapons to choose from, each with their movesets, and then each weapon has a skill tree.
So give me tell me the weapons.
So you have dual wielding, which is an axe, and
okay,
I think it's like a sword. Then you have spear, and then you have great sword, which think like Monster Hunter, where you can charge an attack and like tackle or disjoint an enemy attack while you're charging it. So it really reminded me of that. And it's got some really cool combos that you unlock in the skill tree as you progress, and they really change how you play. So that's where it really differentiates itself from any other Souls style, because it does have a lot of different combos you unlock and different choices and stuff. And the pace is very, very fast once you get those combos and everything. So it's
what
actually
did you think
really
of it overall?
solid. Yeah, I really kind of changed my mind on it the more I played. And the last boss in the demo is one of the most fun bosses, I would say, in those types of games, actually. Yeah, because it looked amazing, was badass, but it was a straight up fight where there wasn't any BS, like, oh, I'm getting grabbed out of nowhere, or like something out of my control is happening. It was just a straight up man fight. It was awesome. It was tough. Had to learn it and stuff, but really got to play around with the different combos, different weapons and stuff, and experiment, find something I liked. So
Frankie was saying
much
that he
respect
felt
for
it was a big demo too.
Yeah,
like
it's girthy. Meaty. Yeah, it's girthy.
Move myself up here. So I mean, would you say like where is it on your list of excited
I think
to
cautiously
play when it comes out?
it's a buy. If people are itching for a Souls game, that is the most interesting game of that type that's in my radar right now.
Oh, really?
For sure.
Damn. Okay.
Yeah.
That went up from where you were, which wasn't
a lot. Yeah, so it does have the anime Souls thing, but actually it's good. So it's not just a gimmick with, oh, it's anime Souls. No, it's actually a good game on top of that. So yeah, recommend people check out the demo. It's on PC, it's on PS5, I think Xbox as well. Yeah. So jump in there. It's quite forgiving too. It's got a easy difficulty mode if you choose to go down that route. And it's got a lot of options with how you want to play it. You can choose to be a dodge Andy or focus more on blocking or parrying.
Is that what we're calling them? Dodge Andys?
Dodge Andy. Yeah, and some of the combos allow you to evade attacks too. So if you get good at those, you can use that instead. So just a lot of options, which is always something I really value in these games, not having one way to play it.
Wizard of Smoke says, I got a brand new LG OLED, so it's got me into playing the games I've been putting off, like Phantom Liberty, Starfield, getting back into Indiana Jones and Red Dead 2. I've seen a lot of people getting TVs, micro or OLED, or just newer, like you and I've got in maybe the last 2 years. And it's been fun to see a lot of them returning to games just to see, I mean, on some of these games, it's not going to absolutely change the world, but it is pretty cool. People are going back. Yeah, when I saw Berserker, it's going to take a lot to get me to go back into one more of those games. It's just one more of those titles. So I watched Frankie play it for a couple hours in the patron Discord, and that was fun. It's just one of those titles that I'll probably need to see more. It looked to me, not AAA obviously, but it looked like one of those middle games that you'll probably hear people talk about in a year or two saying that was fun. There's nothing necessarily wrong with that. It's just like that to me is sort of, I think, what you and I thought out of the trailer, but there were some questions on the trailer. There were definitely some questions on how the game plays, so it's nice to see people get hands-on with it. Yeah. Anything else?
No, that's it. I've been playing some Wukong as well. So we were hanging out the other day. That was
fun watching you play Wukong.
Yeah, that boss you watched me play probably was the toughest in the game that I've had to go through. I really had to dig in there, learn the moves and everything, but really liked it. And yeah, I mean the fights are just a lot harder now that I'm approaching the end of the game. A lot of them you have to focus and get it right. You're not
Pretty
able to
crazy
brute
last
force as
levels
much.
too. Like,
Yeah,
yeah, when you go to the
yeah,
new
man.
places, you're just
Yeah, that last one kind
Mhm.
of opens up a bit more. It's pretty
Yeah. That's why I was
insane.
saying, where were you? That's why I kept asking where you were, because
Yeah,
in the review period, the same thing sort of happened. As I was seeing people talk about it, I'm like, have they actually? Did reviewers get to this spot?
you can
Because
almost tell like if someone got to the
yes, you can.
last part. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah. So there's some pretty hefty changes to, well, everything in the last section of that, which was very cool, and definitely unexpected. I would say also, I was such a fan of the way that Black Myth plays overall, where it just focuses on the one weapon, even though you get different versions, and the magics, and just that dodge mechanic feels good in that game. It's probably one of the best. I just feel
yeah.
good
And the
when I play
hits
that game.
feel good, man. It's
Yeah,
big dopamine when you hit the big charged attacks. Whether you're doing really all the stances, I think feel pretty rewarding.
pretty rewarding.
Yeah.
Speaking of rewarded, people finally got rewarded with a new Doom trailer. We knew it was coming, Dark Ages, and they showed a bunch. They showed not only a bunch of gameplay, they showed some behind the scenes changes that they've been making, which I thought was quite interesting. Some of the words they said also were definitely chosen for particular reasons. Accessibility and difficulty
Yeah.
sliders were shown, which you're like, huh, okay. And then some sort of a general, I guess you would say, if you look at the original 2016 Doom, it's about, it is really about circle strafing and shooting and consistently moving. And then Eternal was that plus platforming. This one is not that. Like they said, it was stand your ground. And I got to, I'll hold my comments till the end, but
Okay.
you seemed pretty taken with it for the change. Like, what did you like? Graphics. Did you like the way it
So
looked like it
as
played?
as someone who plays these games like Souls or just like action combat stuff, I love the idea of stand your ground, man up, and like just react to what's coming at you, and be a powerhouse. That sort of speaks to me
Hmm.
more than perhaps the Eternal flow, where it's much more movement based and kind of like uh, having to map in your head the different platforms and
Yeah,
the
yeah,
vertical levels and
right.
stuff. So yeah, this spoke much more to me. And then combined with some of the stuff we saw about the mech and some of the other new things they're doing, I found really, really exciting.
What'd you think of the graphics and the design and like the alternative fantasy future thing, like wearing a fur cape while using like what looks like laser guns? What did you like the overall
Yeah,
aesthetic?
I did. I liked some of the weapons. They seemed a bit crazier than other games.
Hmm.
I like them experimenting with those. Yeah, I'm excited to go back into it. What were you a fan of Eternal
Yeah,
or
yeah,
or
yeah. For
no? Okay.
it felt different, obviously, than 2016, but overall, for sure, yeah, yeah. I just what I saw. What I saw was a ton of footage of a guy standing there or slightly running straight
A bit
forward,
immobile.
shooting a guy. Yeah,
Yeah.
and they showed that there was enemy aggression, all this kind of stuff. They talked about accessibility a lot, which I have no issue with, making it easier for people with difficulty sliders. We'll talk about that later with like Assassin's Creed Shadow, which has a pretty massive change depending on which difficulties you choose and how the game plays. So I like that, but I got to tell you, just being honest, what I saw was something that looked very slow, and I question what I'm gonna feel when I play this game, when I wonder where Doom's identity is trying to go with this one versus every other game versus the prior Doom titles, because the prior Doom titles have been about that really fast, shoot, scoot. You're moving at all
Yeah.
times.
Running.
You're 3D mapping a thing behind you because you know that as you're backing up, you may have to go around a pillar, and to see good players or even not very good players pick that up and start to move and adjust. Doom is Doom. There's very few things that feel like Doom. And that what I saw didn't. There was almost none of that. And it's very difficult to tell where they're going. It's not necessarily like, oh, this is the end all be all, because it is just a trailer. And they were trying to show that they were making changes. They were talking about up close, being able to control your kills from any direction, which I was like, okay. I mean, it is funny that a lot of us like the up close gore kills, but after a very particular amount of time, you're probably moving on and doing other stuff. And they're like, you can control
Yeah.
it from any direction, so it's very difficult for a developer to say, here's a big focus on this without saying we've changed it so that that focus is rewarded by multiple variation and variety. So what I need to see is whenever somebody says we're focusing on this, I need to see why. Like, we're focusing on this. Okay, that's awesome. What happens up close that will continue to cause me to want to do it versus all the other Dooms where that was at best a tertiary move or a finishing move or a thing that you didn't think about as often. I don't
Yeah.
know, man. Like, it was very static. There were guys standing there almost like a Serious Sam, but the animation wasn't on. There were multiple times where he would come into a room with like 100 copied enemies and we're shooting them. And I was trying to figure out if they were just trying to show, and it wasn't about that. And it was almost like I needed them to explain, hey, on purpose, this is showing this thing, and we don't have the enemy AI on purpose so that we can show this, especially when they talked about accessibility later. Difficulty sliders I liked. There were all kinds. I thought the difficulty sliders were a great idea, especially for people who do want to get into a Doom game. But it is funny that if they get into this Doom game, right, because of the accessibility sliders, it will in no way, shape, or form prepare them for prior Dooms, because
That's true.
it appears to be playing
Yeah.
completely different. So it's a
Completely
very,
different.
it's almost like, I'm not, people are going to get mad because this is a weird comparison, but the only way I can describe it is it's almost like Gears of War Judgment trying to bring you into Gears of War.
Well, it could be training wheels
except even
in a
different,
weird way.
even more different.
Like maybe they get used to everything at a slower or different pace here, and then they can take it up a notch with some of the faster ones.
They could, but if the entire focus is standing and not moving, and up close kill attacks and not moving, then any training they're going to have, those are so negligible in the prior two.
That's true.
So it's just really different. Think about it this way: Doom 2016 was absolutely balls out, full shooting pattern, and chaotic pattern, as well as breaking the pattern kind of gameplay. Eternal was the same with platforming. This appears to be removing those completely, or a great deal, and going to something different, which is why I say something like, it's such a difference that people who maybe see this and go, oh, okay, I'm going to try Doom 2016. It's like, well, you're going to have one hell of a surprise on your hands, because
you're going to barf.
Yeah. Barf. I mean, it doesn't matter in the end. It's what they want to do. What I did see, I thought the graphics were cool. I thought some of the enemies looked cool. They did talk about the story, which is always funny, because whenever anybody in Doom talks about story, you're all,
wait, there's a story? Like,
yeah. So we'll have to see how that goes. I mean, the Doom story is really, it really just patterned off getting, him to a spot to kill the next bad guy that has shown up, And so to me, it's like just sort of the way it goes. The story.
Yeah, there was an aspect to like the Doom, which was if you stop, you die. You always have to be moving, always have to be sprinting, because enemies overwhelm you, right? And like the main way for you to become hard to hit is actually just by running fast all the time, right? So you're just sprinting. Yeah. It's going to be interesting how they do it here, because does that mean we have less enemies, or you just have a better ability to, like they were showing, manage the projectiles like deflect projectiles and
Right.
stuff like that.
Right.
So maybe more of an emphasis on the parrying and everything.
Well, and let me tell you this. Do you think some of it might be in reaction to characters like the Marauder and stuff in Eternal that were, people were having so many issues trying to kill that particular enemy? Did you see
Definitely.
any
Yeah.
Marauders? I didn't see any in the trailer.
Nope, I didn't see anything like that at
Yeah,
all.
so it's one of
Everything
those
pretty
things where,
straightforward.
yeah, where you have to look and be all,
Yeah.
I wonder. Yeah, it's interesting to see what they've gone with that, because when you look at Doom in particular, I think Doom's lineage has been pretty much the same for, whatever years, 20, 25 years. And so when you have all this lineage, all this DNA of a particular way, and what you've been doing is adding to it from 2D to 3D to horizontal shooting, now vertical shooting, and pretty much you can track that on a curve, and you can say, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and you can track it. And then you get this game, which is distinctly different in many ways, to the point to where when I was watching it with the people in the Discord, they were like, "Man, I'm not 100% sure exactly where the plan is, or where this fits in, overall as the character, when it comes to movement, when it comes to the platforming." I think a lot of people who looked at the Eternal, there was a lot of people who didn't like the platforming or felt there was too much. We've talked about that before. I feel like the platforming was fine in it. It definitely got old, long in the tooth when you were 6, 7, 8 hours in, and you would see an enemy on some floating island or whatever, and you'd be like, "How did
Yeah.
it even get there? How did I get there? Why are we trying to get there?" That it was a little less
Right.
of a
I did
solid
like the
experience.
problem solving around some of the enemies there, like you were talking, the
Doom.
Marauder. Yeah,
In
you
Eternal,
really
yeah.
needed to like stop and figure out, okay, what's he doing?
Mhm.
What do I do? Just be reactive and intelligent about stuff. I do like that type of,
Of gameplay.
yeah, like you actually had to think about it, not just shoot everything you see, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and the other thing I liked, when it comes to the accessibility, is if you look at the sliders, they didn't do so. Sometimes somebody will say, "Here's a slider to adjust difficulty," and it'll be like enemy difficulty. Be like, "What does that mean?
Yeah.
What does enemy difficulty mean?" And here it was doing things where it was talking about like aggression. So that means, my opinion of what that
Like
means, depending on
reaction
yeah, and
window
depending
stuff.
on how the game plays, does that mean maybe not movement, but does that mean how often they do their moves, how close they try to get to you when doing them? Do they gang up on you multiple ones at a time? Those kind of adjustments for new gamers, I think, are it's
Yeah.
very cool. It's just I need to see more. And that was coming out way sooner, right? Way sooner. That was like May.
So yeah, I think it got leaked, right? 15th of May as the date.
Yeah, we don't have much in May that I saw. I mean, unless like GTA decides
No.
May, right?
Right.
Yeah, did they announce it during? I don't think they announced it during the event.
No, it was leaked. Yeah.
Graphically and performance-wise, that game's probably going to nail it. That's just the way they do. They're always good with performance, for the most part. Always good with the graphics.
It's almost like they have a hidden slider themselves when creating the game, like performance. Just
yeah. No
maxed
matter
out.
what you're doing, performance is maxed out. I don't know. What did you think? Were there any enemy designs you saw? I saw the main boss at the end. He had
I like the
multiple
fat
eyes.
guys.
Yes,
Like
so
the
did
really
I.
chunky guys.
Yes, so did
Because
I.
as you hit them, they would like lose pieces of the flesh and stuff.
Yep.
Just like,
Yep, I thought that was very cool. I definitely thought that kind of thing where
yeah.
you see them go and sort of change the enemy, bigger hitboxes, but depends on how much damage they'll do. I like that kind of stuff. Same thing in Serious Sam, where you would face off against normal enemies in Serious Sam. And then you'd have like the Scorpion with a minigun. And you'd be like, all right, that's pretty sweet. So yeah, it's definitely cool to see. I do need to see more of it. I just think it's one of those titles that it would be nice to see a little bit more. A1 Nagel says is watching The Walking Dead. Have you seen The Walking Dead's new series, the one with Lincoln who comes back?
No,
the main
haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, I haven't.
No.
Either. I need to actually check it out. It's just one of those things where I really have not really wanted to sit down and watch a Walking Dead in years. I mean, nothing against it. It's just been one of the things. Romulus says Pal World and PoE2 with a bud. Path of Exile 2. Okay. Kig's doing Diablo 4. Yep, I watched him last night. Kniev says, can you guys talk about Assassin's Creed Shadows and the new Ninja Gaiden? Yes, we will. Prize
Yeah.
says playing Rebirth. Oh, okay. Kniev also says cover the RTX 5090. Yeah, okay, right. Let's talk about that for a bit. No, let's talk. We'll finish up the Xbox event, then we'll talk about the graphics card stuff. Expedition 33, that looked phenomenal. That
Yeah, I think that's for sure something I want to play
yeah,
based on everything I'm
yeah.
seeing.
They did, dude. Like you know how you see sometimes trailers and they sort of look the same. There isn't all those times where you see a trailer and you go, okay, this looks dramatically different. I felt that the trailer that we saw was hugely improved. Lighting seemed improved. General design seemed improved. Some of the FPS drops I saw in the original didn't seem to be occurring here. I just think
Mm.
that game, from a artistic standpoint and maybe a technological standpoint, looks like one of the best of those kind of games, which really does help people. Graphics matter, right? Looks matter.
Yeah.
So you see it and you're all, okay, yeah, that looks pretty sweet to me. I really did find that game enticing when I saw it. I mean, the storyline doesn't interest me so much, but some of that combat just looked phenomenal, man. Phenomenal. And
Yep.
it is turn-based, so it's like how long will that be phenomenal? You know. It might be one of
Yeah,
those ones.
that's always a question.
Yeah. Did you look at the trailer fully? Did you get a chance to look at
I did.
30? What do you
Yeah.
think? I mean, overall, are you excited for that one?
I am. I'm like you said, kind of have to learn a bit more about it before I jump in fully to see if it's like for me or
Mhm.
not, right? Because
Mhm.
some of those games look great on the tin, but then when I kind of get in there and see a bit more about the gameplay and stuff, it just doesn't really entertain me as much.
Mhm.
It really depends. But
Yeah,
yeah, over
Metaphor was
looks
like that, I
wise,
guess.
yeah,
Yeah.
right.
At least this one looks better than Metaphor. Metaphor was one of those
Oh,
games that looked a certain way. It just had a certain art
yeah.
aesthetic that was quite unique and not necessarily for everybody. It didn't go out of its way to, you know, it was the person who's like, I have a good attitude. I'm not going to put on makeup when I go outside. You're like, all right, you better have a really good attitude. It seems like it seems like this game is trying to do both. The other one was South of Midnight. So, you know what that one is, right?
I'm looking it up right now. I
So
don't think
South
I've
of
seen
Midnight
the
is the one that
video.
has the claymation slash stop motion cutscenes. So it
Ah,
looks like the
okay.
frame rate is really bad. And then it goes to normal gameplay for most of the others. There's still some performance issues.
Yeah.
This is one of those titles. They showed some combat. It really leaves a pause. All that combat that they showed, it felt a lot like so many other third person action games. I need to see more of it. I wasn't really enticed by it. I like the art design though, dude. The enemies are okay. Some of them were cool, but it's the characters that character in South of Midnight meets that looks phenomenal. There's like a big
Yeah.
turtle guy that the design is just like those moments are primo, almost like you wish you could find that as an anime or something, or as an animated flick, or a stop
Yeah.
motion
Like
movie.
a big crocodile I'm seeing.
Dude,
Some of
it's
those big enemies look great.
yeah, they look great, but then you see, but here's the problem: every time it looks great, it's doing the FPS on purpose stutter thing. So we've talked about this before, where it feels like a lot of games go one for one. They give you something and then they make a dumb decision. I'm not saying this is a dumb decision yet. I'm just saying that a lot of the people that see those go, okay, that looks awesome, but why is it stuttery? Or why is it, because they don't know. I mean, and why should they?
It's
You
a
know,
bit confusing. It's like, is there
yeah.
something wrong with the video? Like,
Right. Right.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. That one jury's out on that. Some of the stuff I saw, some of the animations, some of the attacks I
Mhm.
thought looked cool. Main character seems fine, didn't really, sometimes the main character when they talk or whatever, you're like, "Uh-oh. Forspoken was that way."
Yeah.
Or Forspoken was that way.
I thought they were trying to go for a Nightmare Before Christmas. Is that the name of it?
Mhm.
The classic,
Yeah.
from Tim Burton.
Yeah. That would be cool. Hadn't thought about that.
Just some of the style looked a bit like that.
We need to see, man. We need to see, because that is a very unique idea for their animation. Um, and all those times when it looks great in the cutscenes, it would look better if it was smooth. I feel like that's
Yeah.
just sort of the way it is.
Yeah,
Artistic
and it
design's
also
one thing.
depends on the gameplay, right? Because you could have a really unique artistic look, but if the gameplay turns out to be pretty generic, kind of like just
Yeah.
imported from Unreal, type thing, it can become really tedious.
Yeah. What other games did they show there at the event? They showed South. They showed Doom at this event. They showed shoot. What else did they show? Let me bring this up. Anybody in chat remember what other games they showed?
Well, Ninja Gaiden 4.
Oh
right?
yeah, there you go. Ninja Gaiden 4. And
Yeah.
announced that Ninja Gaiden what? Is it Ninja Gaiden is on Ninja Gaiden remake is on
Yes.
Game
So
Pass.
the remake is out.
Mhm.
I think it's Ninja Gaiden 2 remake.
Yeah.
Someone correct me if not. And then there's the announcement for Ninja Gaiden 4, which that looked a bit more interesting. There's something about those games that never have been very appealing to me. What did you think of?
So
4?
I watched a bunch of people playing the game yesterday that released on Game Pass, and it looks like what you would consider to be somewhat of the typical remake. Unfortunately, things like DLSS, this is a problem Microsoft has and needs to fix, especially because they fixed this in other titles. DLSS doesn't work on that. Like it was immediately last night, people were like, "Uh-oh, DLSS doesn't work and be on the Game Pass version." So that being said, what I saw was a typical remake of those action kind of games. If that appeals to you to go back to play them, great, nothing wrong with that. I was more interested in 4, and it's definitely its own thing. They are very specific. They're a little like Devil May Cry, but without that storyline that is celestial. So the thing about Devil May Cry that works versus, let's say, Ninja Gaiden for some people is that Devil May Cry a lot of times has these multiple groups fighting, and you might be able to hinge on one group. Just like the new one, you might have been able to hinge on one of the fighters or one of the characters, and that might pull you through because you're interested. And you've seen this in Game of Thrones. There'll be 21 characters. You care about 4, but you're going to read the other 19 because those 4 are good enough for you to get through. Maybe you like all 24, but I'm just saying that happens. I would say Devil May Cry is that way, but Ninja Gaiden is more about here's some gameplay, here's this character, and here's a world with a generic story that I call it generic, but some people like it, I'm sure. But you have this story that needs to pull you through the gameplay. I think their gameplay is pretty rock solid usually, so I'm confident. I'm confident overall in the gameplay being like good enough. I just don't know when you see these other games, Johnny, that are coming up. I think Phantom Blade Zero is the other one we saw a year or so ago at an event, and I think they even dropped a preview here recently. The competition, Johnny, is insane for every game. Just like you noticed with Berserk. There's 85 games that are competition for Berserk that weren't competition less than a year ago. And so that's the one thing I wonder about. Did they say an announcement time for the new one?
No, I don't believe
Just
so.
that they're working on it.
Yeah, they're working on it. And it did look good. It looked a little bit more like a Platinum game. I see some people mentioning in chat too as well. Platinum Games kind of looks like it. I agree. It looks much more polished and much more like something I would like to play. But there is something really crunchy about the Ninja Gaiden games that it's what I was saying, that it's never attracted me that much because they are so difficult almost for the sake of being
difficult.
It's almost like those platformer games where the fun of the game is just being brutally challenging, right? Like you have to perfectly nail everything and repeat it endlessly until you get it.
Yeah.
And that just, I don't know if it speaks to me. I mean, I like playing some difficult games, but I don't know. We'll have to see, man. I did like the look of it for sure. It had some really cool combos.
And so, somebody in chat brought up a good point. It's futuristic cyberpunk style ninjas, which is great, right? It's not. We've already got enough ninja games or samurai games. Well, we don't have enough, but
enough
we've got
Nobunaga stuff.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I will say, I think the big question is we know many people have left Platinum. We know Platinum has your A, B, C, D, maybe Q tier, teams, as we've seen, unfortunately, come out from
Yeah.
that company. I, I, Platinum. When somebody says Platinum to me, it doesn't mean much anymore.
Yeah.
Except for
True.
I remember the good old days and the
I
occasional
think a
good
lot of
days
people
now.
think near Automata, but
Yeah, yeah.
Platinum have done, like you
Platinum
say,
have done,
hit
yeah,
or miss.
yeah, they've
Yeah.
done hit or miss. So I'm still excited for it overall. It is a game, like you said, they like to tease that they're super hard. Devil May Cry, the reason why I bring up Devil May Cry again is because the difficulty. They even had a thing that alerted everybody you were playing on wussy mode. I don't know if you remember, but Reg was playing
Oh
on like
yeah,
easy
dude.
mode, and he
Yeah.
was laughing because it posted a big like watermark going like, you suck, which is funny as long as it's handled, as long as it's not, like, why are you here?
Yeah. Abusive. Like
Abusive, yeah, yeah. Where all the characters in cutscenes are like, "Hey, man, we're not going to talk to you because you played on easy mode." I, to me, it looked interesting, but it's too far out to really. I need to see a level, maybe walk through one level to really get an
yeah.
idea, and then a demo would be great. I think with Berserk or Berserk, I can't remember how that one's pronounced.
Yeah.
I would they did well with the demo, and I think demos are coming back. I mean, I don't think they're coming back. I
Yeah.
think demos are generally back. And that to me is the best part of gaming right now is that you have demos, you have the ability to jump in and go, what is this? You can have some disasters on your hands, as we did with Pinocchio Boy, where the demo didn't reflect, I think, the quality of the game for 90% of people once they played the
Yeah.
game. But Liza P, just so everybody knows. So, that's one of the things that we'll have to see. I thought what it was looked good. It's exciting. It had been told to us a couple days before, and I heard people saying, "Oh, there's this secret game," and I'm like, just be tentative on thinking it's going to be an exclusive GTA 6, side
Yeah.
title or something. And luckily, I think most people who went in were genuinely excited, but not disappointed because the hype hadn't exploded on it. What other things did they show at that event? Was that pretty much it?
Honestly, I think that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
The other stuff we've talked about
We
already.
had a good time. We were watching the event live, and Solar was in there, and he's like, "Man, they talk a lot." And we were like, "No, it is a developer direct, and that's where the developers talk." So a lot of people, I think, go to those, and he wasn't bitching at all. He was just like, "This is an odd feeling event," because the guys were just like, we're going to show you sliders and stuff, which generally is not what happens. And that was sort of funny. That was like hearing that and going like, yeah, I can see why somebody would watch this and go, what exactly is this? But the developer directs are different, letting the developers stand up and say, hey, we're the ones who make the game. And here's some of the ideas that we have. I think with Doom, it helps a lot because if you just released a trailer with people standing there and him running forward, it would have been a disaster. So being able to say,
Yeah.
here's what we're doing even if I have my questions on it, that's a massive bonus. It's a massive plus. And I like these events, man. I like I like these small events that the developers are doing because people can just jump in, get a little idea of what's going on at a company, and then, as long as the company doesn't blow it out of proportion, get out
Yeah.
and come back later when it's
Yeah.
shown.
As long as it's not super self-indulgent, where they're just smelling their own farts and talking about how amazing everything is, right? That they do in their processes. I like the ones where they give you the vibe of like what it's like between the people. So you see a couple of the devs, like,
Hmm.
bit banter between them, or just like what the environment is like, really. Kind of like Hellblade, I think, maybe started doing those vlogs where they, show the actress and them like talking with each other and stuff. Those type of dev interaction stuff, I do find
I agree with
nice.
you. I do love seeing the behind the scenes where you see their offices. I don't know why,
Yeah,
but I
yeah, there you
feel
go.
like offices matter. Office, you'll see an office, let's say, and on some games, and it's dark. The walls are carpeted, which I've always, somebody who's worked at a big facility, 13,000 people at max were on this facility. You would see certain areas that were dark. Had heavy carpeted walls to stop echo and stuff like that, and it had a very professional but dark, focused vibe, right? very focused. And then you see another developer where they show it and they're all sitting at windows, right? There's bay windows and there's trees and birds landing, and you see a developer looking outside and you're like, okay, I sort of understand, where they are working. And then you see the old pictures of the Doom guys in a basement with like 16 pizza boxes stacked up, and you're like, I understand all of these.
All right, that's the vibe. Yeah.
That's the
right.
vibe we're going for, and I get it. Yeah, that's awesome. Looks like here a lot of people seemed pretty interested in Doom, interested in the demo. Also, Amar says, hopefully I pronounced that right. Finally managed to catch you live. Much love from Bosnia. Thank you very much. Hyperion says hello. First time I actually catch you guys live. Big love from Romania. Thank you very much. You and Dev Guy are probably the two guys that made us #1 in Romania for quite a while. And I appreciate it. Two people in Romania just sitting around some old Walkman.
Hell yeah.
With, instead of headphones, it's got the little 3.5 that goes to a small speaker, and they're sitting
Dude,
there.
what picture do you have of Romania?
That. I've talked to him a lot about it, and I was telling him one day, I was like, that's what I assume is like a box, right? There's like a box.
Everybody's sitting on the box.
It is Stalker. For some reason, actually, now that I think about it, I don't know why for there either, but that is the idea that I have. They're all sitting around, they're dressed in like fatigues for no reason, probably don't even have guns, and they're just listening to the podcast on Fridays before they do whatever they do, whatever Romanians do on the weekend. Tell me what you do. What's your what is your enjoyment factor? I was asked, talked a little bit to Lucitan about this. We do talk about business stuff on the side occasionally. I do want to bring this up. EA shares went down 19%, worst, basically the worst track that they've had since the .com bubble burst, and they lost about $6 billion in market value. Not because of any one thing, but because of a series of things, and then the overall identity of the products that they've done, as well as their financial announcements. And it was two things. It was Football Championship 25 did not meet expectations. Dragon Age was about 50% of what they thought it was going to hit. And it reminded me of the other company that talked about their game. We talked about it in chat. I think it was called Abandoned 5. It was the female actress from Witcher 3. Witcher, the TV show.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
They stated in their announcement, not only would there not be a second title, but the sales were so bad there wasn't even the desire to look into anything concerning that IP. Right. So we saw some bad news in the last couple days, which, it's unfortunate. The EA thing, but I played some Dragon Age. It was definitely like this for me. I didn't with Dragon Age. So Inquisition, there were parts I liked and parts I didn't like. So I had an emotional resonance with it. And it was like, I bounced, with in particular with Veilguard, there wasn't even enough to keep me going, but not like I hated it, and I didn't get to like some of the stuff that people were talking. Well, I got to some of the stuff that people had issues with when it comes to writing, but I was just like, this is an odd one. It's just, it's fun at times, but it got very rote. And so I didn't return to it. I don't know anything about Football Championship though. They just said,
me neither.
Yeah, they just said it was a slowdown. It says this is from Video Game Chronicles. They said by Thursday, publisher lost $6 billion from its market value of $37 billion following pre-earnings news, which was that EA Football Championship generates around $2 billion a year, with around $800 million of that made up of Ultimate Team. So Ultimate Team has come. This is a statement from them. Ultimate Team has come to be viewed as a Swiss clock of interactive media bookings growth, meaning they can always expect it. If it's stagnant, it puts enormous pressure on EA to fill that void. So there you go. Yeah.
Do you know if this is the first title under the new name Football Club instead of FIFA?
Right?
I believe so. I was just curious if maybe that has something to do with it. Like I believe they still have all the licensing for teams, don't they? They still have the ability to feature all the rosters and everything.
Dude, so here's the problem with soccer, man. I just don't know.
You don't know?
I just don't know.
I feel like we would have heard... Oh, people are saying no in chat? Yeah, educate us, guys. FC 24
was the first change. Thanks.
Okay, gotcha.
There's also
Yeah.
evidence that says grows that Astral Chain director Takashi Taro could have quit Platinum Games as well. There's some changes to
Oh,
LinkedIn and stuff like that. So yeah, I did see that. Also, Doom Dark Ages comes with a $200 collection edition with a Doom Slayer statue. Now, this created a joke in our chat yesterday where we were like, is there a person out there who doesn't play video games at all, but just collects the statues? And I got to admit, as the conversation continued, I bet you there are, because some of the
yeah.
statues for video games are pretty sweet. I don't think they're worth it cost-wise, but where maybe they don't have time to play games, but they love the art style of particular games, the design of particular games. Somebody out there, some creep, might have just the upper torso body from the Dying Light games. That was so questionable. I don't think it was questionable. I just think it was dumb. But yeah, so it's possible out there.
Yeah.
People are saying 25 is home to 19,000 licensed players, 300 clubs, 30 leagues.
Oh, okay. Nice. So they do have the licenses.
Dude, that's pretty.
So it's really just a name.
It's
changed.
really just a name. That's an insane amount of, anything. 19,000.
Yeah, I think Dragon Age, it's just like when you have a meal and it's
okay, where's this going?
Okay, like if you eat something that's highly palatable and it just tastes amazing, right? You're going to eat like twice of the amount you require. You're just going to keep going. But when you have a meal that's just, it does the job, but nothing about it is like really doing anything extraordinary, you're going to eat just what you need. You're going to eat like enough to sort of, stay alive and cover the...
And you feel that's Dragon Age?
I think that's Dragon Age. I think it's a bit of a lukewarm, mid-level meal that you're going to forget pretty quickly. You might enjoy it, but you're not going to eat a ton of it.
Let me continue with that. Let's continue with this. Do you know what Dragon Age is to me? It's a place that did have a good meal and you keep going back hoping it'll be the same and it turns to a buffet at the end. That is how I feel. And the buffet always has food you try and you're like, I don't like this. So it's like you went once, maybe Dragon Age Origins, and you're like, this is a fantastic game. This is a fantastic meal. You go back again and you're like, I have some memories of this meal, but it's not as good. And then you go and Inquisition is a buffet and a lot of it's just bland. And this last time is pretty much the same thing, except occasionally you get some undercooked food in the writing. And yeah, I mean, that's how it feels to me. I agree with you completely. I think Dragon Age as a series just isn't as enticing as possibly Origins made people believe. There is a lot in, or if that makes sense, like, and nothing against it, because obviously when you look at Origins, it did some fantastic stuff. But I do believe that the lore, whenever I talk to people about the lore of Dragon Age and try to ask them what entices them towards the lore, Witcher 3 has a lore, entices people, Mass Effect has a lore, all these games have a lore, what entices them? Do you know what happens with Dragon Age a lot of times? I just get some silence for a bit. And they're like, well, I like the Wardens. You're all, okay.
Yeah.
Well, and then it moves towards I like characters or I like the origin stories. And that to me indicates, I think, that maybe the initial success of Origins sort of caused a belief that, hey, we're going to be able to deliver these games consistently at that level, but then they never did Origins again. So you're sitting there going, that's odd. I don't really know why I'm returning to this, but it's just a weird one. Sleeve says they don't have the FIFA license anymore, but they have licenses with clubs, leagues. Yeah. Dodger says, unfortunately, not many good buffets. Yeah, that is true. Carrick streaming from the Golden Gate Bridge. Oh, did I put up the Golden Gate Bridge? Oh, I did as my background. Yeah, man, we're here. We're here in, doing it from the Golden Gate Bridge. Yeah, just decided
actual
to do some
location.
Travel. Just decided. Yeah, this is for sure where I'm from. Remember that time Reg put up one where it looked like it was. It did. The lighting looked like he was there, and you're all wait. Or people thought my one gray background was my background. I was like, I wish my house was. I mean that room would have had so bad an echo though. But yeah, so we're starting to see some of these companies come out of 2024 into 2025, and still seeing some of the same unfortunate financial difficulties that'll continue for a while. which
Wait, hold on, Carrick. I lost your audio, by the way. Just checking.
Anybody else? Can you guys hear me? While Johnny's trying to hear my audio. Dragon Age is like a restaurant.
And we're back.
You can hear me? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Solar says, I feel Dragon Age doesn't really have an identity. They change their game's art style and gameplay. Yeah. That is honestly exactly how I feel. The other thing I was going to say, though, Johnny, was Doom is releasing on all systems. And they made that clear. And Phil Spencer had said that when they were deciding to make Dark Ages, he had asked what they wanted to do. And they stated, we want to be on everything. And I think that it doesn't have to be for every game, but Doom has been on everything since ever. I mean, Doom 64, Nintendo, you know what I mean? Like, so just continue that on that one. If you want an exclusive somewhere else, it's fine. But Doom just being exclusive seems to be, I think, just not a good choice, especially as we see sales for games can continue on different platforms despite Game Pass, which is Call of Duty. Call of Duty, the #1 seller in 2024, was a Game Pass game. You always hear people say that they won't sell and I'm sure some people didn't buy it and played it on Game Pass. But as we found out in our Discord when I was doing the little polls, like what, 50, 60% of people who got it on Game Pass bought it anyway because they didn't know if they'd cancel Game Pass at one point. So there's all this kind of thing that sort of, I think, works out for Game Pass. I like the idea of Doom coming out on everything. I think PS5 is a good place for that. And it's different than Indie, which comes out Indie comes out on PS5 in May as well. Is that correct? Indiana Jones?
I haven't checked. I'm not sure.
Indiana Jones does, yeah. What's up, Sleeve? Thanks for telling me the audio's working, guys. I appreciate it. So, next up, what do we want to talk about first? Do we want to do Assassin's Creed?
Yeah, let's talk about that. So you did a chunky preview.
Yeah. So on these previews, especially with previews, I personally feel with previews of like big open world games, a lot of it is about like how much you can get out of it because these companies like to move you. They're all, hey, we want to show you some character stuff, blah, blah, blah. Hopefully nobody gets in trouble for this, but I was one of the last people to do hands-on with it. So the demoist was very, very experienced, right, in what people had experienced prior to me. And they were asking very nicely, hey, do you want to move forward to this area so we can show you a cutscene, whatever? And I was like, no, I do not. I do not. Can I just do what I want to do? And they were like, okay, if that's what you want to do, you can go ahead and explore. So what I did was I sort of did a little bit different than everybody else. I was like, I'm just going to play both of the characters, skip or ignore some of the cutscene stuff with the story because it was disjointed anyway. And I played about 60-40, maybe 50-50 between the two characters, between your samurai and your shinobi character. And I got to say, as somebody who's done these before, the first thing I noticed was weight, inertia, momentum. There was a massive difference. So this was a mandate originally, which was we do not want to repeat Jacob and Evie from Syndicate. That is one thing we do not want to repeat, meaning basically a skin change for the two characters with some skills tacked on. We want them to be fairly different. That is an understatement. They are dramatically different. But I do want to clarify some incorrect data that I don't know how it came out because it's literally on the documentation. But people have said that Yasuke, or I'll pronounce that wrong multiple times, but as we were calling him during even the demos, was like, yes, that character has stealth. They can go prone. It was a little bit odd to see because I saw people saying that they couldn't do stealth, they couldn't go prone. Absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt, can go prone. I'll show some footage here while Johnny and I are talking. And that stealth works. So I played with that character, climbed around, moved. One character's got a grapple. We'll discuss the samurai first. He has the ability to go prone and the ability to do stealth kills. All the stuff you would normally expect. And in fact, many ways plays like Eivor from Valhalla, but the way he should have played. Meaning weight. Weight was a huge missing factor in Valhalla. When you attacked in Valhalla, you felt like Bayek, or you felt like Cassandra, or you felt like Alexios. There was a very defining line. They all felt generally the same. To say this character feels nothing like the other character, that is truly an understatement. He is a heavy dude. He's wearing over 70 pounds of armor which is ridiculous. He jumps like he's got no kneecaps. Like he can, I mean, it's hilarious. He can jump, but it's like a distinct difference in his ability to move than the other character. He runs, he moves, he attacks with a far denser base than you see with the other one. And certainly something I would have loved to have seen in Valhalla. I think whoever worked on this, whatever they do in the future, if they do make bigger characters, they really need whoever worked on this to identify what's working with this character and say, this is the way this character should move.
Yeah, even the stealth kills from him are like
the
brutal.
Stealth kill. Do they even say brutality on him? But so moving around there, does he move fast was a question I was asked. I would say no. I would say even at a sprint, that character's sprint is exactly what you would expect for a massive dude with about 70 pounds of armor. He can sprint, he can run, but it's certainly not speedy. The other one was, at least that I noticed, where people were saying, how does the climbing work? So the reason why the climbing's different, the reason why it worked for me, and I can only speak for me personally, the reason why it worked for me is this. I know a lot of people who can run really fast who can't climb anything. A rope. You know, go to rope gym. You have many people who are sprinters who can't climb a rope. Same thing happens here, but he's also got 70 pounds. So you have this massive dude who's a warrior who can't climb. He's also got gloves on. I'm fine with some of the places he can't climb. He can climb other locations. There are spots where the character said one time in the entire time I was playing, there was a tower where he said something that sounded like the shinobi was the only one who could get there, but it was only one time. All the other locations that were viewpoints, he had to get to in a different way. He could still get to them. It's that he had to fight his way upstairs to get to them, or he had to fight his way to places to climb across and do what you would consider to be Eivor style, or looking more like Eivor, and not without a grapple kind of thing. And as I played him and moved with him, that resonated with me as an ideal. I think it's good whether you like it or not, and whether you want to play stealth or not. I do like the fact that there is a great deal of overlap. What it requires is finesse, and that's the one thing I think a lot of people were not picking up on when they were doing the demo, was that you can do 90% of what that other character can do, and that other character can do 90% of what he can do, depending on the skill of the player and the abilities that they get. But he was able to move around much better than I actually thought. He also can kick open doors or smash through doors. There's not a ton you can do, but instead of, let's say, one character who can't get through a door and has to sneak around and lockpick that door, or has to go, in some other area to get in, for many of the doors can be like, boom, I'm kicking this door in, which I can't wait to see if that comes across in the missions that we saw in Valhalla, where every time you invaded a location, there was a door and you had to get friends to help you either open it or find some entry. I like the idea that possibly he or she have other ways of getting to it. And this mandate of making sure that it wasn't Alexios and Cassandra, which were fairly overlappish, or Jacob and Evie, I'm happy with. That's exactly what I wanted, because if we had gone the same way, the complaints would have been about that. And I was actually very surprised. We did a little research thing. 98% of all the previews were insanely positive, which is higher than Valhalla, higher than any other Ubisoft game that I could find. It was actually one of the more positive ones. But previews, I've always felt, negative or positive, don't always replicate once you play the game. Valhalla is that way, where you play the first 8-10 hours of Valhalla, and it's great, or could be great, and then it falls apart.
Was it kind of like Spider-Man, the switching? I'm just curious.
No, I'll talk about that in a second, because when I talk about it, then I'll just jump to her. The other thing I want to talk about is he has some very cool stuff they talked about in the paperwork and in the interviews, but for some reason people, I guess, just didn't remember. He has katas he can learn that are not included on any skill set you see, that he learns from masters around the world. So his combat is pretty deep. It's got light, heavy attacks, but then both of those attacks have a focus. So think of it as light, medium, and then heavy, heavier. So you have 4. And then you can merge those, and those are your stance, your basically your focus attacks, and you can merge those in with the normal combos. Then you have katas you can learn. Plus, he has way more weapons, so he's got a distinctly different feel in your combat. But you can stealth for sure. Like, that was one of the first things I did, and I did the same thing with her. What I did was, I don't believe in just going in and playing one of these characters. That makes no sense, because you're not getting. I mean, the entire ideal of this is playing both. So what I did was I went in, I played him as stealth and then as fighting, and then I went in as her and I played her as stealth and fighting to see how those overlapped. So switching out characters can be done way more often than I actually thought. You still have to go into a screen. It's not like Spider-Man. But if you are, I came up to a castle and I looked around and I was like, you know what? There's a lot of special enemies right here at the front. Do I want to fight all them? I do not. That seems like that is going to be a very difficult fight because some of the bigger guys are insanely hard, especially on hard difficulty, which is where I played it. So what I did was I switched out to her. You go in, you hit a button, it's a short load. It's shorter than the main game load, but there is a load there. And it loads her up. And then you can use her to look around, do parkour. He can do parkour. It's not like hers. I mean, you see some of it here where he can like spin around, drop. He has parkour. It's just not anywhere near what she has. Hers is more about that. Switching to her.
She has the grapple, right?
Yeah, switching to her, the first thing I started using was the grapple. The grapple can be used in some attacks for like assassinations. You can also use it to swing on something and drop. It's all static, meaning if you see something on a limb, that means you can flip your grapple and you can attach to it. And you can drop down, you can attack, you can use that. She has a chain weapon as well as a dagger. So she's brittle. Really brittle. Like she's not a glass cannon either. Even when you upgrade stuff, it's all about movement and trying to make sure that you really don't get hit many times because she gets stunned quite easily. You can still do the focus attacks, you can still do the holds and break enemies, but some of those enemies have some attacks that for her, if she gets hit once or twice, they start doing stuff where, for example, I think it might be in this footage, I got kicked. As I got kicked and stood up, a guy shot me with a bow. Another dude on a roof threw a rock down on my head. And then the guy behind me had kicked me because I had heard some other things where they said enemies are standing around. They definitely do on easy. When you in normal sometimes, but on hard, at least for what I experienced in my playtime, on hard, there were multiple people attacking me at any time, even if they were preparing a special or powering up an attack.
So you're getting comboed.
So I was getting comboed pretty bad sometimes, yeah, with her on hard. On normal, so we can talk about difficulty before I continue on her. There's a very cool switch here with the difficulty. In exploration difficulty, one of the things they explained was if you're on easy or normal, enemies have a tendency to do video game that we see in every game, including Ghost, where they look pretty much horizontal, they look somewhat down, somewhat up, but they have an ultra widescreen style viewpoint of the world, right? So think of it as like 180 degrees, 10 degrees. So you can be standing above them, just like Splinter Cell, where you do the double Claude Van Damme kick and a guy walks right below you, even though he should be able to see you, that kind of stuff. But if you go too hard, they can see you up there. And that's where prone is a godsend. So prone lets you break the degree line of sight. So if there's a roof and you're here and standing, line of sight can see you on hard. But if you go prone, now it can't. So prone becomes this thing that as the samurai and as the shinobi, I used way more than I thought I was going to. Because you also don't get kicked out of you don't get kicked out of prone to loot, which I thought you were going to. How many games have we played where you get ready to loot and it switches you in front of the case and now you're viewable
immediately
by somebody?
Revealed.
You're immediately revealed. In this one, at least the places I went, I was able to go like ding and take the stuff, and I was all, oh my god, thank you. Like that kind of thing is what Assassin's Creed hasn't had, and to be called Assassin's Creed, I think it's needed for a long time. So that was great to see that.
Yeah.
But continuing on as her combos were fine. Her stealth is good. She's got a couple different moves for stealth. There's a lot of illumination around the levels that you can put out. You know, you can put out
that was cool to see.
Yeah, you can put out a candle. Yeah. You can put out a lamp. I saw a lot of people who were very high on that. I thought it was cool. I need to see more of the game because this was only 5 hours. So and it was 5 hours where they did want you to bounce around.
Splinter Cell.
Yeah.
Where, you would shoot lights and stuff and create paths for you.
Yeah, so that was quite surprising to see. And people were showing me other preview video where people were doing some pretty crazy attacks with both of those characters that even I didn't get to try out. Because they did, there was a boss. Well, I got to see the boss for a bit, but because I'd taken so long, I didn't even get to finish that fight. I got to hit him a couple times, and then it was like, okay, they cut it. They were like, that was one weird but nice thing. They didn't say continue. They were like, they were fair. They were all, you've chosen to explore the world more than anybody else, so we're going to just go ahead and let you do that, but we're not going to let you also get the other. They were like, here's your amount of data, which I thought was actually sort of cool. Open world areas have a different style of exploration. I wasn't sold on it. And what I mean by not sold on it is this. So they're like, there's no eagle. I'm fine with that. I love that. I also had no issue with the eagle, but I like that they've chosen to do that here. But you still have eagle vision as her, so she can look around and has sort of X-ray. That's ninja vision, I guess, what you call it. And they both have something where when they get to a viewpoint, they hold a button like State of Decay. I don't know if you remember State of Decay, but if you get the binoculars,
Yeah.
you have to look at something and it goes like, brrr. So this doesn't do that. It's pretty instant, but you still do it manually. I need to see how much that changed, just like we talked with Doom, where they said, hey, look at our focus is changing. I'm like, well, how does that play out over many hours? Does that focus change play out? I need to see how that plays out, because to me, I was all, okay, I get it. But
is
what
that
do I
to
get
discover areas or more like scan enemies?
You can scan, you can do both. It's basically, if you're on top of a viewpoint, you're scanning far away. And if you're in like, let's say a base, you can see like the people in there and little icons that say like, here's what you're looking for. Okay. As well as it's a soft map, which I like, but I need to see way more of this. So imagine this. It's much more like some games that do this and have done it better than Assassin's Creed in the past. When you're walking around and somebody talks, as they talk, things start to blossom up. So somebody will say something, and 20 feet away, you'll sort of see that be like, here's a thing that you can look at because this person talked about it. As you get close, I got closer to some animals, and it slowly blossomed up and said, hey, do you want to sneak up on this animal? And I'm assuming that tutorial goes away after you've done it. You're just that first time it did that. As you look around the game world and explore, those things come out. You also have a scout system. And the scout system, all we got to see was a small amount. Scout system is more in-depth. At least that's what they said, was there is actually more you can do. Right now, what you do is, if you don't know where to go in a quest, because they say this lady is in this port city, she wears blue, which is typical AC Creed or the Assassin's Creed games, where they've gone towards the soft stuff on some parts of their quests. And then she carries 2 swords. If you walk around the city and you're like, I can't find this lady, you can then send scouts, and they'll go and they'll try to find data and sort of identify stuff. What I did like is the scouts can also go to other locations and basically cause hell, so that if you have a heat meter there, if you're known as the dude who's been assassinating people and you're wanted there, you can send the agents there to sow anarchy until finally people are like, yeah, that guy is a bad guy, but these guys are worse. And so these guys are who we're going to worry about. You can also send them to do stuff for your base. You can send them to do a bunch of things. I was only able to do 2 or 3. Like, I was able to send this, able to send that, and those kind of things. So it wasn't like super in-depth what I saw, but they did explain. There was in the demoist and stuff, you could ask questions, and that was easily explained, that there's more to do there with the agents. And the agents, I don't really know what other actions will pop up other than what they said, but I do know that when you build your headquarters, which is a fully customizable base that you build, you can put a dojo in it, you can put all kinds of stuff, a little bit like, what was it, Assassin's Creed 2? Was it 2 that had a base? Was it Brotherhood?
Not sure. I don't think 2.
One of them had a base
Brotherhood
system that you could build. It's much more customizable than that, but you can also build stuff to make better agents, allow them to do other things. That's also where you upgrade items. So what I noticed when I went into my item section, there is no upgrade while you're here. I couldn't find it, at least. It stated you need to go to your base to upgrade. And I sort of like that idea. If this is what they're doing, if their overall idea is to go manual viewing, manual this, no eagle, go here to do this, I'm okay with the idea of that. We just need to see, because, you only have a certain number of hours. I really need to like get hands-on and see how this feels 30 hours in. Versus the 5.
You touched on something I was going to ask you about, if there was like a loss system or a heat system if you start killing people or doing stuff they're not supposed to.
So they have stated there is for sure, because it's right in the documentation, that there is some kind of system where it's probably connected more to the quest, because you are a samurai. So you can kill anybody. You're like that. That is actually I even talked about that in the preview. I'm like, listen, this is a world where the only people with weapons are the people who can kill you with those weapons. And, even though ancient law still made you couldn't just go around doing it a bunch, but, I would assume you'll probably be able to do it as much as you want. But the problem is we only got to see one location that was a city. And there's a lot of guys around. And so what I found is, if there's guards at a gate and I killed like somebody in a battle, they would definitely come over. They didn't instantly attack. But there is a heat system of some kind. There is an aggression system of some kind, because there's 3 other systems that feed into that system that they have in the documentation about sending agents to go and remove it. Also,
but you don't have the desync thing like in prior games. If you
I didn't go around slaughtering people. Yeah, I don't know. I didn't go around slaughtering people, but I would assume I would assume as a samurai, it's probably much more on
lenient.
I don't know. I can't speak for that. But I can speak for there is for sure a system, because then we got to the weather. So the weather system and the dynamic seasons, after a particular amount of time exploring, you can move the season forward or pick quests. And when the quests are picked, they will sort of tell you either it's going to move to another season to get prepared. Nothing is instant. This is the manual thing that's going on in Shadows. Everything is it's like time is passing. Everything is a little bit more manual than the other games. So you fill up this season system, meaning you've done stuff in this season, you've explored, you've done some quests. If you want to move it forward, you can move it forward, or if you choose a quest that moves it forward, it moves it forward. However, it does state right when you do that, this will also, if you do it, it will remove the heat. It will remove whatever anger people in a particular region have for this character, and then you can go back. So you will. So again, there's 3 or 4 systems that show that something there is like a thing, and they're tracking that for sure. But it's just how it's being tracked, how much it's being tracked. I saw some people say there was nothing, and I'm like, well, we know. I don't know about how it's handled discreetly, but there is 100% for sure a thing, because there are 3 other systems in the game that all discuss burning that off. And including the ability to pay it off somewhere, as in
makes sense.
Like with cash.
Yeah. So it is a thing, and then like
it's a thing in some way. So there's a horse. Yeah, there's a horse.
Okay, and fast travel or no?
So, there's there was fast travel. I think there was fast travel, or did I just walk? I think I just walked.
Okay.
Or rode the horse. But the one thing I did like, there's 2 things that are awesome. One, this might be the first Assassin's Creed game to have it. I could be wrong. I don't think Valhalla had this. You can adjust the walking speed.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Oh.
That was awesome. Number 2, auto follow any NPC that is talking. So when an NPC is in a quest, you just hold a button and the character follows that NPC. And I got to tell you, that is the dumbest reason to like something. But when that happened, I was all, holy crap. Thank you, God, that we can actually walk with the character. So I did this with children, women, men, samurai, a bad guy, not a bad guy, sorry, all those. And basically they walk, you hold this button, and I believe in other games, did Witcher do? I can't remember. I think we've seen it in a couple games, but so it's not the first, but it's the first that I remember.
Well, the matching speed for sure, but not auto walking.
Not auto walking, yeah. So that was awesome, and did not, so far, in the 5 hours I played, screw up, because that was the other thing I was worried about, is getting bumpy, where you bump into a guy. It just seemed to work. Same thing with horses.
I like those, man.
You can do the same
I
thing. I
remember in Red Dead 2 when you could do the cinematic horse, where the horse is riding on its own and you're just looking around.
Yeah, so you can do all that. I thought that kind of seamless transition stuff worked quite well. Here's one thing I did have an issue that I felt I wasn't a huge fan of this. I just wasn't a huge fan. The female's lead's voice acting is really, really odd.
You mentioned that. Yeah. What about it? Like,
dude, I can't tell. I don't know who it is, but it sounds a little bit like somebody who doesn't speak English at all and is is just saying the words, there's something very rat-a-tat-tat about it that doesn't seem to hit inflection points at all. So there's an immersion mode, which everything's in Japanese. So you'll be good to go if you want to do that. And there's other options, just have main characters in Japanese, blah, blah, blah. So you can switch it. That was the only one. His was fine. I didn't really have an issue with his. I just don't know what it was about hers in particular. It was, and it was definitely in missions. I noticed it more. You know, barks are where a character just says something about the environment. That's considered a bark. So when when your character says, "Oh, look over there," it's Aloy all of Horizon. When Aloy won't shut up, right? Hey, I bet you I could do this. Hey, I bet you could do that. Hey, I bet you. So those are barks. Her barks were distinctly odd. They were odd sounding. The other thing I want to talk about with audio, I did not notice compression issues like Valhalla or like Origins. Origins had some. Valhalla got really bad. Legion was very bad, where they had a lot of compression on the voices. Eivor, if you listen to him in Valhalla, he's like, you know, when he taught, there's this mechanicalized voice, man, that is always there and resonant, especially if you have even somewhat good headphones. That seemed completely missing. There were a couple recordings that sounded like they weren't recorded in a studio, but those were third-person random guys talking. So overall, the music was awesome. Music was awesome. I thought that was great. Let's see. What else do we got here? Thanks, everyone. Cool. Shadows gotten so much hate. I'm happy. Oh, has it? Oh, I guess Shadows would have got hate for... Oh. Yeah, see, I'm always... When it comes to, like, the hate of a particular game, it's... Oh, you know what? It does get hate because I got a bot downvoted. I posted my video. It had less than 2,000 views, and it already had 4,000 downvotes. So somebody botted my video right away. Yeah. And it's probably because at the starting of the video, I said I was actually surprised. And so they heard me say something. They didn't look at the rest, and they were like, boom. But yeah, that was sort of weird. I think that's probably only the third or fourth time I've got a downvote VOD. But I was like looking at it going, wait, there's twice as many downvotes as there are views on this thing in 6 minutes.
That doesn't pass the...
Yeah. Alp says sometimes AC games are a little long. I don't have many RPG games, I don't have many RPG games over 60 hours that I want to put 100 hours into. Yeah, I can get them. I can understand that.
Yeah,
overall.
That's fair.
Let's see. Let's see. Yeah, you can't climb some areas with that character, with the samurai. You have to go around, but it's pretty, I mean, it tells you right in the thing that you can get to all the areas. You just have to go around. It's pretty much explained. So if somebody missed that.
Was it kind of like you're approaching a level or maybe a fortress you have to infiltrate. And at that point you decide, hey, I'm going to tackle this with this person or the other character. And then you kind of go through the whole thing with that. And maybe you switch it up later. Or did you find yourself switching in between like the action at all?
I found myself switching between the action mostly when I would see a place and go, I want to try this or I want to try that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. For sure. Yeah, as Bit says, it's really cool about the traversal. That's one of the best parts of the game to me is the fact that there are requirements, because one of the biggest complaints, even though it's one of my favorite games, is Syndicate, where every character felt the same. Like, even though I like, whether you like one or the other. And in Odyssey, the same thing occurred. And a lot of people were like, okay, it would be nice if you guys finally say, if these two characters are different and they have they're different classes, paladin, and like fighter in any normal game, they would have different skills and completely different things they could or couldn't do. Assassin's Creed's always shied away from that. This is the first time I can say they didn't shy away. Like, you have to, if you want to try to sneak somewhere with him, you have to look around and you have to be a much smarter player when it comes to understanding the game world's locations. And it could be easy to miss. It pops up right there. Like the actual thing literally pops up and tells you that, but it's possible somebody missed that or people have missed it. But I think with the game, they'll make sure that tutorial pops up a couple dozen times. And
I actually like the idea that you can't do certain things as well.
So do I.
Like, he can have a crack at it, or she can have a crack at certain things he does, but it's very distinct what each of them are good at.
Yeah. Guys, don't diss on other reviewers. Whatever. Like, if somebody missed it, it's fine. It's like, that shit happens. It's a preview, but yeah, those things are possible and they're shown in the game. Like, just move on. That kind of stuff is like it is what it is. I
So
would
you
say
mentioned the difficulty, by the way. I just wanted to go back to that real quick. So you said we had like exploration and
and
then
combat.
combat
Yeah.
difficulty.
Yeah. Yeah, and combat difficulty made a huge So I have a feeling just because they didn't say to switch it, that a lot of people left it on normal or easy, whatever their demoist had it on.
Yeah.
When I jumped in, they said, "Hey, you can do this are the differences," and I was like, "Well, let's just put it on hard because I can always turn it down." You know, I think we started the first cutscene on easy, or not easy, but normal is what they call it, and then went from there. And it really, the big thing is enemies continual use of parries and dodges. You'll see it in some of my footage where there's a number of enemies and there's a lot of dodging, there's a lot of movement, there's a lot of all this different stuff that is required that isn't necessarily required. It feels a little like an older Assassin's Creed game if you played on normal. And the one thing that I liked, or the best thing that I like, is climbing up on something and having them look up more and sort of see you. Because I don't know about you, but Ghost did this all the time too. You get up on something and the enemies just pretend they can't see you because you're above this, right? It's like they have a certain pixel line. It's like they're wearing a shitty VR helmet. And there's
or one of those beanies.
Yeah,
that,
no, you
Yeah.
mean like a hat with a long bill. And
Right.
here it's like boom. Dylan says, "Do enemies still wait their turn?" No. On hard, some will, of course, some won't. I saw a couple bugs where an enemy like would leapt over a fence and then went back and then turned around and leapt back over the fence. On the other hand, about 30 seconds prior to that, I did that. There's a part where I went over and then thought it. I went around. I'm like, whoa, and then I went back and I remember. I don't know if I put that in the footage. I was hoping to put the two in there, so show them do it and then show me do it. But there's a part where I did it and they did it, and I was like, yeah, that's sort of embarrassing. I just did what they did. There are times where they don't multiple attack. There are times where they do. It also depends on the location. And what I noticed, which I found interesting, I believe there's something going on with certain weapon types, because I noticed if the guy has a chain, chains are circular, and he had a tendency to not attack next to somebody. Like it's thinking, I'll hit the guy, even though that's not really like something you normally see in a game. And I saw it a couple times, and I was like, I don't know enough to know if that's actually occurring, and I didn't have enough time to test that one particular guy out or those particular guys. But I can say I fought some specials in a base. There were 3 specials, 2 guys with chains, and that was on hard, insanely tough. Insanely tough, because I didn't have any of the I had my 2 or 3 specials. I had which is the kick. I can't remember. I had the kick and something else. And fighting those guys, the 2 smaller guys were dodging all the time. There's these shinobi characters that, dude, you really have to use specials. You really have to like almost identify them and move off, hit a guy a couple times so that you can turn around and get him on the way in. Because if you go after him, they're just and you're all, I cannot hit this piece of shit. Now with the smaller character, you could, but then if the big guys even come near you and hit you, that smaller character is going to get, I mean, just brazzard. I mean, it's ridiculous how much you can get stunned in that game. Let's see. Asked some more questions here. It looks like I got some in Discord. How many weapons does each have? So the samurai has a great deal more weapons and more types. You have katana. You have the large hammer club thing. You have, oh my god. Do you have doubles? I can't remember, because I stuck with katana and the big baseball bat looking thing, which is just hilarious. It looks like a bedazzled baseball bat. And one other that I did, but he had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6 or 7, plus the ability to go to a rifle, and the rifle can switch different ammo types. I used the ammo type that just killed people. I didn't mess with any other ammo type. I was under too much duress in that battle when I did use it. I shot. I was like, okay, that worked. So stop that guy. But yeah, so it's just one of those titles where they've definitely decided to split it. I think some people are going to want it to be more like Odyssey, where they're just carbon copies of each other. And I got to say, personally, that would be fine. It would be fine. And I could like it or dislike it. I haven't been super hot on their Assassin's Creed games. but I do appreciate that they're not, at least from my preview. It was like, oh, okay. And I because I purposely went out there to play them both as stealth and both as action, I got to see that it's like, okay, you can do it, almost everything from each one of them. She can do some stuff, but can't do others very well. He can do some stuff, can't do others very well. She can grapple. He has to run up. He can live much longer, and he has way more attacks and way more things he can learn in the game world, where she has those sort of out and about. So, and they can both go prone. Let's see, what else am I being asked here? How easy was it to climb with the big guy when it comes to village structures? So village structures that are 1 level he can get, 2 levels he can get. Basically, as long as it's a normal jump height, he can climb onto anything. It's that when there's a gap, which some of the, the Asian style buildings were having, that I had to run in and figure out a way up. So yeah.
Right.
Let's see. That's it for those. What else? Any questions in
what
chat?
about, real quick,
No
skill trees?
Mhm.
And is that similar to other recent Assassin's Creed games where you have the...
Yeah. So here's the weird thing. Because he has secret stuff he can learn, I'm more interested in those than I was the skill tree.
Oh,
because I was
cool.
like, oh, weird. So, and basically what I was told was that these katas he learns are hidden until you learn them. And then they're like, I'm just saying this out loud. This is not the right buttons, but X, Y, X, X, Y. And then he'll do this special kata at the end that isn't in the skill list. But the skill list also has moves. So in that way, it's very much like Cassandra and Alexios from Odyssey, where you look at it and you're like, okay, here's a skill list. Here's things I can buy, blah, blah, blah. Any endless quest boards? There is a bounty / quest board in the game, but it does a ton of stuff, and I don't know if it's endless. That's a very good point. I do not know if it's endless. Do skill points split between characters? I do believe they split between characters, but I'm gonna say the honest truth is I don't remember buying something and jumping instantly to verify if the other had that skill point. Or those skills remaining.
Oh,
I apologize.
is it the same skill tree for both, or like a separate thing?
Oh no, there's separate skills for both, but I don't remember if how the points work.
Oh,
Yeah, because everybody's got their own stuff. There's still, I mean, that's sort of one of the major things about the game. But also the size of it is a little confusing because I sort of need to know the secret. For example, the katas. It's like, does he have less? And the katas are going to build that up, or is he going to have the katas plus the same amount? So there's some questions there on
hard to tell.
Hard to tell, yeah, because they didn't. There were some things that they were like, don't go this, because there were a couple places I went where I was like, why is there a wall here for the Animus? And they're like, that's for the demo. You can go there normally, but it's like, we don't want you going there right now. Whether it triggers something or things like that. Secret Neo skills. PTSD. Oh, I see what you're saying, Dylan. Yeah, it could be that. Let's see what else. Why is the feature for walking so complicated? Yeah, I don't know. Bit asks that. Yeah, I don't know. Let's see. Go ahead. Ask your question. Sorry.
Was there any Animus stuff, like kind of going out of the Japanese world back into reality?
Not that I did. There was Animus stuff in the story and in the opening, but
okay, so like the game will have some of that for sure.
Yeah, yep, for sure. Norb says, why hide enemies and sneak if you can see through walls anyway? Takes away so much. Well, I mean, what? I don't know what that means. Why hide enemies and sneak if you can see through walls anyway? Well, I mean, in a way, that would be like, why add extra skills if you can still do light and heavy attack? That doesn't make a lot of sense. Because when it comes to those things, you're also stuck in place, meaning you're weak. You're at a weakness. You're at a, what do you call it? A disadvantage. So, I mean, I guess I could see that, but that seems sort of, I mean, otherwise you would walk around in the entire game world with X-ray vision, or you would walk around the entire game world never having a skill that indicated your senses were incredibly high. So the opposite of having it, I think, seems way worse, which is not having it at all, because it is a
yeah, I mean, that is the way they showed that the character has, really good perception, right? They can kind of hear the sounds and tell where people are.
I guess you could use like comic books where 13, the video game, did this. When somebody was
Hmm.
walking in another room, it'd go whack, whack, whack. You could see the comic book
Yeah.
word, like steps. It wasn't step, but it was like thack, 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 to show that somebody was walking somewhere else. But that would be really disconcerting. Also, if you did audio, it would be insanely confusing because there's so many fucking people everywhere. Like you're at, like if you just used audio, that would be, even as somebody who loves audio in games, I feel like that would be rough. Let's see. Jeff says, is the AI new or does it still feel the same as previous? I would say it's a mix. The one, he says something else. Are you a god in the bush? I will say this. I don't know if I messed up. I'm just going to be honest. And I don't know if hard changes this, but there were multiple times I was in bushes and they were still, like, you could tell they were still looking for me and they were moving through it in a way that seemed as if there's a soft tracking. They also say that there's a system in place that if a bunch of enemies are there, they will worry less about defense and just attack. And as enemies are killed, they start to become more defensive. I stated in the preview, and I still back this up, I was not able to discern that going on. I was not able to really pick up, because if I had 5 people, they were still attacking me in hard. In normal, little less so, but in hard, there's still animations. They can't all attack you as 5. That's ridiculous. It wouldn't even look right. This is a video game. But I couldn't discern that system running, even though they've said it's there. And we've got a month or two, so maybe they're polishing that. I don't know. I couldn't pick that up. Dylan says, sometimes X-ray vision is kind of weird in games. Sometimes it'll end up turning a thing I just spam. Do you know where, that's a good point, Dylan. Do you know where I spammed that? Was Nom Vision in Mafia 3. So in Mafia 3, the character was from Nom, and they basically were legitimately describing your ability to see enemies as Nom Vision, And once I picked up on that, I was like, I spam the hell out of it. I don't spam the hell out of it here because it slows you down. And, it just feels like overall, once I understand where an enemy is, just like Splinter Cell, I just go from there. But yeah, it's a good point. It's a good point. You can definitely misuse it. Any other questions before we begin? So when it comes to the other weapons, guys, I just remember the hammer. Sorry, there were 2 or 3 others, and gosh darn it, if I can't remember what the others were, because I stuck with the major katana. I tried out 2. Oh, let me talk about skills and weapons for a second. One thing I did notice, I don't know what this means, by the way, but the weapon bonuses were huge. That was, so when you do a normal attack with the samurai sword I had, it was like 1,500 DPS. The focus attack with that weapon, 6,800. So the payoff for using the focus attacks is massive. But even beyond that, you have weapons that have attributes. Those attributes were pretty insane. There was an attribute that was like 20 seconds of healing or so. It didn't feel like +1. Now, that's because I also didn't have a ton of weapons, so I need to see how the loot system works. But the actual skills that you got on the weapons that were attached and the armor were not small. They were much larger than I expected. We were also level 20. I don't know how high that is in the game. I don't know if it's got a skill cap. What did Odyssey have as a skill cap? Anybody remember what Odyssey had? I think Odyssey had a 60 skill cap when it played, maybe 40, 60. So we were probably,
I think around that. Yeah.
We were either 1/4 of the way to the skill cap, or we were half the way to the skill cap when we played this at 20 to 24. And those were some pretty massive skill bonuses on those armors. Is there mythology or fantasy traces? Yes, but not overt. No, at least what I saw. There was no like Asian lung dragon.
No demons running around or something.
No, but wait, but there. You know what was cool? There were a couple guys talking who were talking about demons, and I think you're supposed to figure out it's bandits, right, or something like that.
Okay.
But I walked by some guys, and they were talking. There was a couple times where they were talking about these odd things happening in the forest, and they're like, "What the hell?" Like he came out and he did this, and then he was dead, but he came back, and
so like some mythology, some superstition.
There was definitely
stuff.
some superstition stuff playing out, but I didn't see any actual. Well, I mean, it's the Animus, right? So it's hard to know what's technologically, delivered via the story versus what is like you're supposed to pick up as mythology in the game just being replicated. It's hard to know. It's hard to know. That's a good question. We only had, like I said, 5 hours, and then at least 40 minutes of that was cutscenes because they wanted us to see the story. So, anybody have any other questions before we go? Yokai DLC would be crazy. Well, one cool thing about this delay, guys, if whether you like this game or not, is the first DLC is free, right? Isn't that what they said now in this one? I believe because of the issues that they had in the delay, the first of the DLCs is free. Donald says, for what you can talk about, did the story grab you? So, from a character standpoint, yes, because I'm interested in what that character is going to be and how they're going to show history, how they're going to show racism, how they're going to show all that stuff. Because that was definitely shown on multiple layers. Like, you could see that right away. On the female side, I liked they showed less. I liked some of her stuff, but there was a mystery there that isn't, we didn't get to see it all. I would say as a preview, it was okay. It was okay. There were parts where I was like, "Oh, I'm really interested in this," but, it's a preview. And it's very hard to know exactly what we're going to get out of that preview. So, yeah, sorry, I can't answer that one as much because I personally think it really depends on these games. For example, Odyssey, I don't know about you, Johnny, but I wasn't interested in Odyssey at first because I don't like that time frame at all. But I didn't really love the main story in Odyssey. What I did like was the side stories. A lot. The mini quests, sex with goats. Like, I was like, what is going on?
I
and
agree.
there was a sense of
I
humor.
think those are what I remember, actually.
Right.
Outside of the main Leonidas
outside of the main.
stuff.
And then in Origins, I didn't love that character, but I was somewhat okay with the story. Valhalla was a mix. So this one right now is it's a mystery. It's a mystery. Yeah, I can't. That's a good question. We got speaking of questions, we got a couple in the Discord. Ginger Snap says, have you been able to play with the HUD off, and has it been improved? I did play with the HUD off, and there was an immersive mode as well that they do, which changes the languages, blah, 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 which I think some people are going to want to hedge between those. It's pretty much the same as turning off the HUD in any other Assassin's Creed game, except in this one, pretty much every quest doesn't tell you exactly where to go unless you use the Pathfinder ability, which shows you the line, like on the horse, so if you're riding the horse, but it doesn't draw you directly in all the quests. It just takes you to the general place. So I thought it was pretty enjoyable. Let's see. Baron says, what's the minimum amount of time you need to be available to make it worth starting to game for you? What is the minimum amount of time you need to be available to make it worth starting to game for? Oh, I see what Baron's saying. So if you have a 24-hour day, what's the minimum amount of time that you need to sort of say I'm going to turn on my system? That's a good question because you play in the early morning, so you're a better example of this than I am.
Yeah, I think 1 hour. 1 hour is already solid.
Really?
Yeah, dude, if I get a focused 1 hour in a game, even a tough game, you can make some pretty good progress. Maybe not a heavy story one, because if a cutscene takes 40 minutes, right? What are you going to do? Like one cutscene? Then not. If we're talking about like Metaphor or some of these big JRPGs and stuff, then probably a couple hours to make it worth your while.
Yeah, because I saw you that morning playing, you were playing Wukong before work.
And I beat the boss in that 1 hour. It was beautiful.
So that was the morning you beat the boss?
Yeah. That was it.
Okay, there you go. It pays off to play early. I need a little bit longer than that, probably just because this is not an excuse that, but it's like I do have dogs. I have things I have to take care of a little bit more. So I need a little bit longer as a gap so that I can sort of prepare things before I jump in. So I would say more like 2 hours for me. Let's see. Ginger Snapped answered the question instead of realizing it was a question thread. It's fine. He says, bro, I struggle with this daily. Waste more time worrying about ability to play than actually playing. Kig says, can you play most of this game with one character if you want, similar to Syndicate? Yes, you can. You just have to understand where to go and how to move and, and that things might be more difficult depending on who you are. Green Saturn says, did Ubisoft's rendition of Feudal Japan live up to the standards of prior games? Yeah, well, this is only 5 hours. I would say overall, yeah, because I believe that while they do a good job with world building, putting things in places, historically, they do, even locations are closer together. Like when I mean, that's just sort of truncated
Sure.
landscapes. So I would
Yeah.
say so far what I've seen, it'll be a place that people will want to explore. Whether that pays off after 5 hours, I couldn't tell you.
Yeah, and graphically it looked amazing, I thought.
Yeah, the only thing I have an issue with is like you look at the characters' faces, and there was definitely, well, see,
Mm,
here's the problem. We say that, but then I went back and looked at Ghost. So I went back and while my video was rendering, because Ghost is what this will be rated against, right? So I was like, okay, you
yeah.
know what? No rose tinted glasses, because I fucking just don't believe in that shit. And you
Uh,
hear it because people just say it. Then I
Go
went
back to
back
the
and
tape.
I
Look,
went back to
yeah.
the tape, and I was like, oh, okay. You know what? Just like many games, third person, the third level characters, you get your Starfield third
Yeah,
level
the B
character that's
level.
like,
Yeah.
and looks, and the same thing happened with Ghost. It
Yeah.
absolutely is a real thing where those characters don't always look great. I do feel that the main characters, they looked okay. In the cutscenes, they looked different. It's definitely a scale down. But there were times where I would see some like a person's face and be like, okay, this is an Assassin's Creed game versus Resident Evil. But they're a completely different presentation. I mean, there's very few games that are this wide and big where they do deliver on everything. I mean, even Ghost had far less to do, whether you like that or not. It just had less to do, which means resources are spent differently. I wasn't like hyper impressed with some of the faces for sure, especially like some of the characters that you meet. I was like, okay, this is typical third person. They didn't. It's not a new engine. It's not a new engine. So if you're expecting it to, like, let's say, be a new engine, it is not. It's not Unreal 4 to 5. It is quite literally the same engine with changes to the world. Let's see. How was the skill tree in Shadows? We explained that. Overcrowded like Valhalla or tighter like Mirage? I would have to go back and look at those. But they definitely have skill trees. I would say, did you remember Valhalla's being overcrowded?
The map
No, he was
or
talking about the skill list. Maybe he means like there were too many. Could be that he means that. Could be.
could be. No, I thought it was fine. I didn't have an issue with that particularly.
Yeah, and I don't remember it too much
No.
being. I mean, there were some in any game that's like +5 to damage kills my soul. So like a Path of Exile, I know
Yeah.
everybody else likes, but
Right.
those are the ones that I've always talked about this. Let's see. That might be it for Shadows. Yeah, interesting time. I had some issues with it. There's some things I think I'm not gonna probably be as excited as Ubisoft was, including the exploration stuff with like looking around where they seemed to think that was a big deal. Combat was fine, but the systems they were talking about, I just couldn't discern what was going on. But I love the idea that they have finally decided to split the protagonist skills and make them feel different.
Yeah.
If there's anything in this that I walked away and I was like, because the cool thing is you can just switch characters if you don't like one of them. But what if you do like to be like challenged and require different play styles? It is nice to go, okay, I can probably do 90%, but there's these things I can't, and I have to look around and do.
Yeah,
I
and
just
the
can't go straight
duality
through. Yeah.
of seeing a location through a different lens. If you're the samurai, you're looking at the doors, right? Like, hey, I can run through here. I'm going to tackle these enemies. If you're the ninja, you're probably more thinking about the rooftops and stuff.
Yeah. I mean, here's to hoping, right? Because, of all these games, the Assassin's Creed games, I think, Odyssey was the only one I liked day one, where I was like, okay, day one I like this. It was working well enough, and it still needed patches. Valhalla and Origins both had a lot of performance issues and a lot of issues with all kinds of weird pacing stuff, and wasn't a big fan of the main character in Origins. So, and then Valhalla felt good for the first couple hours, and then, like I said, didn't.
Yeah.
So that's where we're stuck here. It's hard to know. It's hard to know. But I appreciate being able to go to that, because I wasn't going to. And I was like, you know what? I like the idea of jumping in and just sort of checking this one out, because, depending on how busy it is, don't know if I'll be able to do a review day one. I'll probably will. Depends on when they offer it. But, and I certainly want to, but we'll just have to see. Let's see. Norb says switching characters should be a menu, or it should be a button, not going through menus. It should be. I mean, yeah. Yeah, if you could.
Yeah.
You can't.
Yeah, that would be great. It sucks that you have to like load in
Yeah.
But
But I mean,
yeah, we'll have to
there's
see
only
how it
like
is in
2 games in the
practice.
entire world that do all of it at one time. I mean, the idea of
Yeah,
switching out the memory set of animations alone from one character to the other. Go look at the GDC where they talk about Spider-Man and Spider-Man 2 switching out the character instantly. It's a disaster. And they all the cheats that they do. I mean, it's very difficult. And that world is a tiny New York versus like some massive city. So, I'm pretty okay with it right now until we get to a point to where the resources for doing that aren't dramatically restrictive on the rest of the game. I'm okay with the load because I would rather just be like, all right, I'll load a little bit versus some other thing being missing because they just don't have enough memory for their whatever low end system they're aiming for. We'll have to see. Oh, that's the other thing. Performance. That was rock solid. That was it was a high end system. I know that. But I will say I didn't have some of the issues I had had with Valhalla and Origins, where I had issues during those previews. The performance was spot on.
that's good. No stutters or anything weird.
No, there were 1 or 2 times where I saw a texture flashing on a character. You know, I've seen that on the best games that still haven't been patched. But
yeah,
there was a cutscene I remember somewhere where there was like his cloth or something was flashing.
A glitch.
That was yeah. Performance wise, seems to be pretty good. I think they released the performance. What do you call it? Too right? Didn't they release
the
requirements?
The requirements?
Or Norb says Valhalla ran
so.
a lot better a year after launch. It absolutely did. You know, just like Elden Ring. You know, they like a lot of these games, whether we like them or not, require you know a shit ton of time. My hope is that this delay, whatever they were aiming for a couple months ago, has allowed them to make sure that less patches are needed. You know, less.
Yeah.
We'll just say that, less. But I feel like optimization is something that goes on for a year now. A year. I mean, that's not a joke, man. A year. Like I'll see a company doing a patch note on a game that's been out for a year, and I'll go back and look, and it'll be like 15% increase or improvement on these graphics cards or whatever, and be like, damn. Like that's a year later. So what happened? You know, what did they find? I'm always interested in what they found, but you almost never know.
Yeah.
Yep. So that's it for Assassin's Creed Shadows. Unless you have any other questions, Johnny.
No, that's it. I'm excited to try it out. I love the idea, the stuff you talked about in your video, like showing the lighting having an effect on stealth. Love that stuff. I'm the type of guy who, loves creating a route for myself that isn't already there in a way, whether that's through the stealth or maybe taking advantage of environmental sounds, like you mentioned, the storms or different things like that, and seasons playing into it, all that.
I have to say, I never know how things, I've told you this, I don't talk to others when we're doing a preview or whatever, because it's like I don't want them to even influence anything, and I certainly don't want to influence the other person. It was genuinely interesting to wake up, get the video out, and look and just see like everybody liking the preview. And I was all, okay, because I had gone back and looked at Valhalla's, and there was a lot of these, yeah, it's fun, but I have questions about blah, blah, blah. And went back to Odyssey even. Odyssey, weirdly enough, definitely had some issues, probably because of the world. A lot of people just weren't into that world. And Origins, because it was the first. When Origins previews, there was some positivity, but when I went back and looked at it, you can look at what's called a positivity or negativity index, and you can use research to find out like the overall general day one. Here's
sentiment.
This is much higher than those. So I was like, oh, interesting. This is like maybe
I think the parkour is another big thing.
It might be. It might be.
You didn't have that much in Odyssey and some of those other games like Origins too. So it's cool to. It just seems like it's a bit more sophisticated the way she climbs and animations and stuff, and
the
different rooftops.
The combat, this was one of the first times where I was like, oh, thank God the combat actually feels good. Dead Captain, $5 super chat. Thank you very much for the super chats. And you hit on a super chat we're going to talk about right now. He says, do you think we're hitting the limits of graphics and graphical power, especially in GPUs? Seems like Moore's Law is slowed down dramatically. So, dude, the 5900 or the 5090, sorry. They showed the reviews. They showed improvements here or there, but they showed the cost. They showed the wattage. Have you checked out any of this? Have you looked at any?
Yeah, I've seen a bunch of reviews, benchmarks.
So,
and
what do you think?
My takeaway, I have a 3090 currently. So I was looking at it from the standpoint of what's the improvement that I would get, right? If I
That
decided to
you,
spend
as a person, would get with the
me
same CPU.
specifically,
Okay,
right?
gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah, so same CPU, same everything. If I just spend $2,000 to get the 5090, assuming I'd be able to get it at
Okay.
MSRP, right?
Right.
And
Yeah,
it
true.
does look like I'm getting more or less like double the FPS in a
Mhm.
lot of games
Mhm.
effectively, which is cool. So I do like to see that. And I know that a lot of it is also sometimes relying on frame generation and stuff. But to be fair, that's fair game. You know, that's part of the tech too. And I would be happy for that. So I am currently, my opinion is if you have a card like a 3090 or maybe a 3080 Ti or a 4080, right? Something like that. I don't view it as a worthwhile purchase because I think even for 4K, a lot of those cards are still doing a great job
Right. Do you think
with
that?
all the
Oh, go
tools
ahead.
we have. Just saying, with all the tools we have, either the LSS or uh, lossless, right? That application, like different things
FSR.
like that that we can do, and mods and adjusting settings and everything.
So, dude, here's the thing. Like, I think overall GPUs are setting up to have some pretty significant changes to how they're put together. Like we're seeing MPUs on the CPUs, that for doing AI. We're seeing GPUs adding stuff for ray tracing, all these kind of efficiencies. I do feel that because of the especially interweaving between chips, these GPUs are starting to add in more. They're starting to figure out, oh, we can accelerate this, blah blah blah. Maybe they'll figure out something to accelerate. I would say it's not just I'm not so bothered by the speed bump or lack of it. I actually think speed bump wise, when I looked, I was like, okay, that makes generally, maybe it's not as much as I want, but generally that makes sense. What I am bothered by, and the wattage, I'm always going to hate. I think the wattage is ridiculous for the 40 series up. That's like ignoring that for a second because I don't think there's an argument. I think it's too high. The one thing that does bother me is just that cost is so the cost is so out of the ordinary that
Yeah,
it's basically become a render station card price. And we've seen it in the past. This is not the first time this has happened, but we've seen it in the past. However, that's what everybody tests on, right? Like they show those numbers and that's what we get first is those and it's like do the majority of people are just not going to be there. The majority of people are going to be, and if they're upgrading, somebody will say, well, not everybody needs a 5090. That is correct. But what happens is maybe they're getting their first PC and they see their PC setup and they see what the lowest 50 does and the highest 50 does. And that's a pretty big difference. So they look at it and go, well, how much of a delta is there because this is a one-off purchase that I hope sticks with me for years. And because we always push forward preparedness to PC gamers to try to buy a little bit above because if you piddle at the low end a lot of times you're upgrading more often. There's no gap time because it's like you're chopping away at the low end for each new game gen. Then you get these people who are going to spend what $4,500 for a PC or $4,000 or
yeah.
3,500 when you add in
I
the
mean,
best
not
card.
very long ago, $2,000 bought you a really good
Yeah, the
pre-built
PC.
system.
The PC
Like,
itself.
yeah, just an entire PC. And
Yeah.
now it's at the level of that's just your GPU.
Jeff says frame gen still has issues when it comes to input lag, though. Yeah, it did. Reflex 2 is insane, and Reflex 2 is the first gen, and I think one of the guys either there or I can't remember if it was them or one of the other tech people who interviewed them. When you look back at how much the lag changing devices or the lag changing software has worked, man, I'm excited for that. I don't like the idea of frame genning 6 frames, though. On the other hand, this is a different style of frame gen, too. It's a completely different way in which it works. So you're going to start seeing so currently on engines, you have deferred rendering, and then you have forward rendering. It's like at some point, I expect somebody to steal, and you can quote me on this, but I expect somebody to steal and on DLSS start calling it future rendering because it does do that in a way, because it future renders and then does the warp to make the frame look natural. I just have a feeling that's sort of how this is going to be explained, and that is different. That is different, but I don't like it too much if it adds a ton of latency. Um, to me, I think latency is hyper important, but not as important as some people have made it up to be. Like you'll hear somebody say, I can tell. They'll be like, while I'm half asleep eating an apple, I can tell 0.1 milliseconds of latency. And you're like, okay, dude, whatever, we get it. You're cool, too cool for school. But once you do start adding a bunch, you also have to take into account controllers, your display itself. There's these other things that add in. So you certainly don't want adding a bunch of latency just to, get to 240 frames per second that will feel like 90. The one thing I do want to say that's cool is you do see the improvement. You see smoother frames, but you are usually inputting, your input latency is usually at whatever the natural one is. But if we can get to 60 and it looks 120, but you're at 60 latency is pretty good on a good game that isn't like super heavy. That's getting to the point where I'm like, okay, I sort of like that. But at the same time, I think everybody wants natural. It's just, I've lived through this before. You and I've talked about this. It reminds me of, back in the day when it was like gasoline and everybody was like, electric cars will never do this, or it was V8s. There's no such thing as anything that can beat it. And people had turbos, and suddenly everybody was mad because, you change your entire thinking for these. I think latency's sort of overblown when you get to super high FPS that's natural. But I think at that low one, when you're in 30 or 60, latency is definitely a thing. You don't want to add a bunch.
Yeah,
and I notice it in most games. Most games when I turn on frame gen, Cyberpunk's notorious for me. I don't know. I've never looked at the numbers, but dude, when I turn frame gen on in Cyberpunk, I swear to God, something happens beyond what any other game feels like. It feels unwieldy. Just something about Cyberpunk in particular feels weird. And I haven't looked at the numbers to see if it's particularly high input latency already, but yeah, it's a weird one. Let's see. On my 4080 frame gen has always stuttered or ghosted or whatnot. Oh, thank God mine hasn't. I've actually been pretty happy with mine. I don't use it. I mean, I don't need to for the most part, but Jeff Rice says lossless scaling gonna take reflex 2. Lossless scale is pretty cool. Lossless scale is definitely cool, especially for somebody who's got a handheld or something like that. Norb says DLSS 4 so far been nice. Use DLSS swapper on certain games. Oh, have you? So can you tell me, Norb, what's a game that you've tested that, like, when you did it and tested it, did it feel generally natural? And then what, if you remember what the game was? That would be sort of interesting to see what the game was. A1 Nagel says 60 ms is good, but starting to creep towards 100. 100 is pretty high. I mean,
yeah.
And if you're with a controller, man, people always buy those third-party controllers, and I'm like, dude, I'll see somebody in our Discord say, I'm thinking about getting this Hyfango controller third-party. I'm like, have you looked at the input latency on that bitch? Like, or the other thing is the joystick latency. I've got one device where the button latency is fine, but the gamepad itself, the actual inputs are way higher than normal, and so you get this oddity where it just feels like this. It's disconnected. It feels weird. Not happy with it.
No,
Dead good. Says, no, it's not. Digital Foundry literally just put out a video. They were 5090 even with frame gen is 30 ms. Oh, do you mean the latency drop because of the new DLSS? Yeah, I was told that it actually had improved a good deal, but I haven't jumped into it. Jeff says, doesn't frame gen latency depend on the base? So it used to. And it still does in general, but DLSS 4 definitely does things that are completely different than the others. So I don't quite know exactly what we're going to see depending on the game engine too. Different game engines, how Unreal handles it versus, CryEngine or something. Norb says, like a Dragon, Infinite Wealth, Marvel Rivals, and Wukong. They just look a bit sharper. Moving objects are now clearer to see, especially lights. Okay, well, that's cool. I appreciate you with the info. That's awesome. I'm glad it's working out for some people. I think it's awesome as a test. Even as a test, dude, I love the idea of like, hey, this creates frames. How does that work? That's all I
I'm
need.
assuming that's locked behind what, the 40 series or
The new DLSS will work on all, from what I understand. I
really?
think it rolls out on 50s, right? Isn't that what they said? Rolls out on 50s,
I
think.
thought so, yeah.
I think, yeah. So maybe in the future, I should change it to that because I haven't really tracked it.
Okay.
But yeah, the latency a decrease on DLSS 4, like the people who, when we got the paperwork on it, was like pretty impressive. It was definitely a thing where you're all, oh, okay, if they're here now, where are we going to be? In some certain time. Also depends how the engine works, like I said. Dead Captain says, I had a friend years ago who's playing FPS games with his TV, not on game mode. He had 100 plus MS. So that is what I had on an old TV. I had 120 out of game mode, and I played multiple online games and did well. I don't, your brain just becomes accustomed to it, I guess. But
dude, yeah, I mean, that's rough. Yeah, kudos to you, because that's definitely gonna throw you off.
Yeah. Yeah. Dead Captain James says, I love 8-bit DOE controllers. I call it DOE, but 8-bit DOE. I like those. Yep.
Yeah, they're pretty good.
I'm a hammer man, personally, with Monster Hunter. What are you? What's your weapon in Monster Hunter?
I was a great sword, Andy. Yeah.
Lesser person. Hammer's the way to go. Hammer is the weapon of the sophisticated man.
Dude, whenever I play like multiplayer and a hammer guy would come in, I would get staggered by the stupid hammer because like there's an AoE around you as you swing that thing and it will knock me out of my attacks. Oh.
A1 Nagel, $5 super chat. Again, thanks for the super chats. It does help the channel hugely, by the way. It says, any word on Switch 2? Hall effect sensors. So the last 3 bits of data that I've got all indicate Hall effect for the
would make sense, right?
Yeah. And there's 2 reasons why. 1, Nintendo already had a disaster with the last ones. 2,
yeah,
if you look at the cost of Hall now versus what it was, which was more expensive, now because of mass production, multiple efficiencies, it's got to the point where for the general public, it's not going to be a huge increase.
Right, the supply chain is there.
Yeah, whether that turns out to be true or not, but that was 3 different. There's a piece of documentation I saw that I was like, you can never tell with documentation, right? You're like, what does this mean?
I love the dichotomy of chat. One guy is like, hate the hammer guys. The other one is hammer for life.
Wait, what? Oh, man. Yeah, I mean, like I said, I just think hammer is for life. If you're a lesser person, and it's fine. Like, I don't look down on you as a lesser person if you're using greatsword, but it's like...
Not all the time.
Not all the time.
Just...
Dude, you know what it's going to be like, though, man. You know what it's going to be like. You're going to have people doing, like, walkthroughs. They'll be using a hammer, and you'll have some jackass in their chat being like, this isn't a real walkthrough. They're using a hammer or a greatsword, whatever weapon they're using. Somebody will be like, I beat this game. It will be
considered less than...
I beat the game with the A button. And you're like, dude, A buttons jump. How did you beat the game with just the A button? I did it twice. I did it with a PlayStation controller not plugged in. It's the bullshit. Bit says, I hope for OLED day. What does that mean? What's OLED day mean?
OLED day 1. Oh, he's talking about Switch, I'm assuming.
Oh, I thought he meant like a day to celebrate OLED.
Yeah.
And I was like, what the? Are we that
International OLED day.
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah. Oh, I think OLED helps. We know OLED is less wattage. I think OLED's big issue on handhelds is screen brightness, which I definitely have a huge issue with on the Switch. And it is just not bright enough. I think the biggest problem with OLED, especially somebody who sells TVs, is that we are getting brightness in them now, but they're usually in the larger devices. And if you want to go super jet black on something, which great, we're now seeing technologies come so close to that I think that's a positive. Other than burn-in, the big thing that I want to see is just a sustained brightness above that 10% bubble. Because that's what people don't realize. When somebody reports a fucking display has 1,000 nits, they don't have any clue what that means. It means it can go to 1,000 nits. But if it's 10% of a little box that can go to 1,000, or when the entire screen goes bright, it goes to 400, that's a shit TV. And that is notoriously what occurs. Is you get you have to look at what the overall size is, where you can get the brightness. The space, you can get the brightness. Do you get auto dimming? How bad is the auto dimming? Because for somebody who uses Windows, I can see it. So when I'm using Windows and I open a window with files, my entire OLED goes, and it is infuriating to see that consistently happen. So if you can get that ability to keep that brightness higher on these handhelds, I'm for sure all for it. Yeah, definitely. I love the idea of it. But did you see the thing in the Switch 2 rails where there's a male connector? Yeah, I did. 30 FPS on OLED doesn't look great. Oh yeah, OLED stutter. Yeah, OLED stutter's a thing. Like, we had somebody in our Discord. This is Void. He came in and he was so frustrated with his TV purchase. He was so frustrated because he was not aware of like what OLED stutter is, which is that, when you get a certain FPS on OLED, the way it can be delivered on some TVs is stuttery looking. And he was just so disappointed in it because while it looked better, I guess you would say, at parts where that wasn't moving a bunch, the moment he moved, he was like, what the hell? This, like, it's terrifying compared to my prior system. You do have to get used to it depending on the TV. Anyone think the Switch may do 2 SKUs from day one, OLED and LCD? Please no. Can we just stop with the double systems, right? Like,
yeah.
I don't know about you, Johnny. I just want one damn system.
One system. Yeah.
I just want one system. So, yeah, I would rather have one, like, in all honesty. Well, I mean, I don't agree with what I was going to say. I was going to say I'd rather have one than 2 with OLED being an option, but that's not true. I'd rather have 2 if OLED has to be there, or if they have to do 2 to get OLED as an option, fine, 2. Otherwise, I'd just rather have OLED be an option if it's a bright screen, and that is troublesome. I mean, there's a reason why we have so many fucking handhelds still sticking to the older screens. Luckily, we've started to see some changes, but they're high intensity, just not great sometimes. I don't know what the Switch's is, but it's definitely not bright enough for me when I'm in like any place with a light or outside in particular. But a lot of people
I
don't
noticed
play
that
these
on
outside.
the Steam Deck because I have the OLED Steam Deck. Definitely. Yeah. Like you're saying, depends on the lighting you're in.
And it's okay. I mean, you get people who are like, you'll get people who are like, oh my God, you said something bad about the Steam Deck or the Switch. It's like, yes, I did, because I can still like it. I can still love it. In fact, I can still love it, but I'm not going to lie and pretend it's not there.
By the way, speaking of loving, Final Fantasy Rebirth released on PC.
Got good
I want to say yesterday.
Yeah. And
actually, good port based on all the reports I've seen. So there you go. After a couple shitty ones, they actually did apparently a decent PC port for that game, which is awesome.
It's awesome.
Because it did suffer a little bit on the PS5, for sure.
I mean, and the thing is, if you want to play it again, well, there's something wrong with you again, less a person.
I was gonna say, even me, dude, I'm a big fan. I'm not playing that again. Like, it's 100 hours.
I'm just joking. That's a mighty test of patience to sit down for that game. Because let's talk about focus again. So I was talking about if a dev focuses on something, you want to see how that focus plays out. They made it clear that their open world would not be just absolutely hammered with a bunch of shit to do. So here's the problem, though. You might be able to play it one time and not do all that shit. So when you come back the next time, you can sort of trade those out. But with Final Fantasy, in particular this one, because they did a good job on the world not feeling too bloated, I just can't imagine in my life going back to that game. Like it's like it felt like a one and done, and a good one.
I agree.
It's when you get done, right? You're just like, that was awesome, or you disliked it, whatever. But the idea of playing through it again is like, dang, that'd be a rough one. Let's see. Can you get a good OLED for $500 on sale occasionally? $500 is still pretty cheap. You're still.
What's that brand? TCL. You talk about sometimes. They got some.
TCL has some lower level ones that do surprisingly well for a non-pinky up gamer kind of thing.
Yeah.
But they still have some shortcomings. They all have shortcomings. See, even the best ones, dude, there's something. Yeah. That's the thing with TVs. Like, you'll get a TV.
Did you see that Amazon Basic one? They released a TV It
Yeah.
was surprisingly decent.
But it was cheap as shit, wasn't it?
It was
Wasn't
cheap.
it like $199 or something? You're looking at it going, how
I don't
in the hell?
remember,
It
but
wasn't
yeah, it
that
was
cheap, but...
well under 5. Yeah, for sure.
Dude, it's so funny when you look at Amazon Basics. This happens all the time. I'll go in Amazon Basics. I'll be getting ready to buy a cable, right? Or something, let's say. And I'll be like, okay, the specific cable I need for audio is pretty expensive. It's $29. And then Amazon Basics will pop up and be like $199 with free shipping.
Yeah.
I'll be like, what the... Like, and what's weird is, just so people know, those actually have been tested. They've been tested many times to have the exact same throughput bandwidth as the expensive ones. It's just all the other things that cause a cable to be expensive, or how it's made, like, or who it's made by. Yeah.
Full white or something, like without any of the fancy, you know.
Oh yeah, you get the Amazon Basic that just has the word
yeah, like the batteries that look like they just came out of a printer,
or
the
HDMI cable. This is going to sound so weird, but the HDMI connector at the end of Basics cables looks so 1970s that it bothers me.
Sure.
I'll get one of the new ones and it'll be like highfalutin, little silver flake on there. It looks like, old
like
Predator
golden
speakers from the 90s, got some lime green or something. Yeah. And then you get the Amazon Basic and you're like, I mean, it
gets the job done.
Yeah, the name is right.
It connects.
It's a basic bitch, but for the most part, I mean, I know a lot of people will still use them and, never have an issue. But it is weird that they creep into a lot of stuff now. Like, you see Amazon Basics showing up. When you go to Amazon, you look at something, you're like, man, Amazon Basics be making everything. The only thing I don't think they make is food and cola. So, when you go to a Fred Meyer here, you have your normal Pepsi, and then you'll have like Kroger, which is the generic brand. You have Kroger, or you have Safeway Select. I don't think there's an Amazon Basics food.
No,
but if there is,
yet.
I ain't getting that.
I bet they're looking into it though.
Yeah. No, dude. No.
Amazon Cola.
No, Cola maybe to taste, but like if they were like Amazon Basic enchiladas, I'd be like, dude, that is just basically food poisoning.
That's like the $1 carton board like pizzas.
Torrentinos
pizzas.
Or whatever they're called.
Yeah.
Tarantinos. Yeah. Let's see. Anyway, the Steam Deck OLED has PWM flicker issues. Most Samsung, Samsungs have those. Some of them, not all. Luckily, I got mine without it, but I hate that shit. Moving on from there, I wanted to point this out too about PCs. PC Gamer states PC development has skyrocketed. GDC survey indicates 80% of developers are now making games for PC as well, more than double the number working on specifically PS5 or Xbox only. That doesn't at all surprise me. Johnny, looks like you also posted this.
Yeah, I saw that's a big figure, and probably speaks to the multi-platform wave. Even Sony is releasing their stuff 1 year after. So I don't know if those stats would include titles that like were eventually ported to PC but originally only PS5.
Yeah, maybe? It was literally just asking devs who were there what they're currently doing.
Okay.
So it doesn't take into account, like,
so
it can
looks
be somebody
like
doing
currently, at least it's, people are developing for everything.
Well, not only that, but handhelds. Handhelds are becoming like I mean, there's like so many Windows handhelds based out there that the idea of like, porting for a PC version just makes sense. And I mean, there's obviously sense in exclusive for consoles for some companies, but at the same time, when you look at PC and you can get, I mean, if you do well, you can do phenomenal having 3 platforms. This is why it surprises me when people don't realize how popular Switch 2 is for developers right now. It's a full other device. Like, people are excited. That is 4 devices. Think about it this way, Johnny. If you go back 3 or 4 years, that's at 35%, I think. Only 3 or 4 years. I could be wrong on that. It might be 45 or 50, but you go back, right? And that is when the Switch is in pretty bad shape because it's already extended its years. Most companies don't want to release. So technically, you're at 2 systems or PC. Now, we are at 2 consoles, the Switch coming, handhelds. Like, the ability for somebody to say, I want my system on all of these places is dramatically larger than it was before. It's just a huge help, man. It's a huge help. I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. Are you planning on getting any handhelds soon? Switch or a one of the, what do you call it? One of the smaller devices?
No, for now I'm sticking with my Steam OLED.
Mhm.
Having a good time with it. I might look into the Switch too, depending on how the backwards compatibility works. So, in other words, if you're getting a better experience playing some of the current Switch games like Tears of the Kingdom and stuff like that, if I
Okay.
can go back to some of those games and now have a much better experience,
Mhm.
that's something I'd be interested in, as well as new games, of course. But
I
yeah,
I think I mean, I don't see you not having a better experience there. I just think overall, I
that's what I'm hoping. I mean, I mean, it just wouldn't make sense to have. But again, we kind of see that sometimes in PlayStation, where certain games there's still the PS4 version, so
Mhm.
you play them and you still have the same performance from PS4
Right.
because they didn't get the PS5 edition, you know?
Yeah.
And that kind of puzzles me because the system has such a big overhead, and the fact that you're not able to just organically benefit from that
Yeah.
kind of blows my mind.
Yeah, I mean, we'll just have to see how all these work out, but it's nice to see. I mean, I don't think anybody's too surprised that PC is coming about, especially because even the mid-level PCs I think are pretty powerful. So these
Yeah.
companies, you know, a developer looks at that and goes, "Listen, guys, I can release on this. I might as well just do it. You know, I
Yeah.
might as
And
well
I guess,
release it
like you said, that
multiple places."
includes, PC would include any handhelds outside of Steam Deck, like we're
Yep.
talking Legion and all
Yep.
these Windows ones.
And if you're looking at a game that possibly might not require Black Myth Wukong graphics, that's a
Yeah.
pretty big bonus. You know, if you can do Citizen Sleeper, for instance, Citizen Sleeper, yeah, number two, those kind of games where you're like, okay, I'm going to release it in multiple places. I'm gonna cover every base. That's just, I mean, there are some games that I honestly feel many people would rather play on a mobile device if they like them generally. If they like them. If you don't like them, it's not a place to go buy one just to play it. I'm saying if you have a handheld and you've got a PC, a Citizen Sleeper style game, XCOM by the way plays insanely well on those. And so
Oh.
the idea to
Mhm.
be able to sit and play some of those games pretty
Yeah.
fantastic when you think about it, you know. Let's see. Have you guys tried the ROG Ally X? I have. Yeah. Switch 2 will be later down the road for me once the exclusives start to pile up. Yeah, I mean that's for sure a thing, like exclusives for the Switch 2.
Yeah.
I do feel like we haven't heard much about what's going on with any games. I mean,
Not
Mario Kart
really.
8
But
or
I'm still expecting there is going to be a big day one game that's
okay,
going to go
let's
with
take
it.
some guesses.
Ooh.
What's ignoring that Mario Kart that was shown. Let's talk about what do you think what what do you think would be the how about this? What do you think might happen or the question could be what would be of greatest benefit to Nintendo? If I said I'm switching
Yeah.
I'm releasing the Switch 2 and this game is the pack in or the day one biggest exclusive, what would that need to be for you?
The biggest would be as a new Zelda game, but I don't think that's realistic. It takes them many years, right, to get through a cycle that maybe something Mario related could be a pretty good one because they can do spin-offs, right, and all different types of games
I
with that.
am not disagreeing, but I would say I feel Mario is bigger. If they
Yeah.
did
Or
one
even
thing,
right, right, is also bigger
it could be,
in a
but
way.
I think Mario's probably the biggest. If they did something like this, they call it Mario 64 2 or S2 for the Switch 2,
Yeah.
whatever. But they bring in that it's Mario 64, the true sequel, a true sequel, 100% built on the bones and the style of the original Mario 64. I think that would be pretty smart. I think that would be pretty smart because you would get people just going like, "Oh my god, there's this, there's that." Now some people are saying Grand Theft Auto 6. We're talking about first person because
Ah,
I agree with
yeah.
that.
Oh,
But
first party, you mean?
first party, I
Yeah.
apologize, yeah. But I just think Mario 64 is it's not only a juggernaut, it's that they've done Odyssey. It was called Odyssey, I think, right?
I think
Mario
so, yeah.
Odyssey.
Yep.
They've done these games, Mario and Luigi, but they've never really said this is 2. And I just
A
think
new flagship
yeah. I just think
Mario.
that would
Yeah.
be hilarious for their PR
That's probably some of the
be a
biggest.
monster.
Pokemon has its own crowd, which is
Yeah.
maybe comparably big, but Mario is the Nintendo,
It's
flagship
everything. Yep.
for sure. Maybe Smash Bros, right? They could say, hey, new Smash Bros game. And to be honest, they could even do it pretty derivative of the current one, but they're just saying switch to Smash Bros, maybe a few new
I
characters.
guess that's
right?
why that wouldn't interest me at all, because that's been done, and we have
Yeah.
like 9 of those. But Mario
I'm with you.
64 has been sitting since the Nintendo 64. It just feels like that would be the thing.
There have been
to,
a couple, like you said, right? The Odyssey was maybe
Odyssey.
a bit like it, but not a full-on meat.
Maybe they don't want to
and
do it.
potatoes.
Maybe they don't want to do it because to them it's not that, they don't think that is a thing anymore. And Odyssey or Mario Luigi is their version of 2. I'm just talking as a pure speculation.
It could also be a business thing where they make the calculation that they can either do one gigantic, Mario 64, or they can do 3 or 4 Paper Mario.
But think of this,
style.
no matter how many Paper Marios there are, no matter how many times they tell you to glue some cardboard on your face and pay for your own VR with Labo, nothing will equal the discussion that exists around Mario 64. It has not been matched.
Yeah.
There are
It's
still
just
people
iconic.
finding weird speed runs and stuff for that game, 25 or whatever. I don't even remember how many years it is. I just feel like yes, you're right, for sure, the cost or whatever, but we don't even know how much how much a 64
the upside
would
could
cost.
be gigantic.
Well,
it could be like an Elden Ring for Nintendo.
And it may cost less than a Zelda, because a Zelda's a different style of game. It's like it depends on the tools and the team you put on it. I just think that would be unbelievable to be like, oh yeah, we know you wanted, we know you still talk about Mario. Dude, there were times where like Twitch Mario 64 was like one of the higher streams, because I think there was a speed run where a guy figures out, I can't remember what it was. This is maybe a couple years ago, where discussion about that game just exploded again. It just absolutely became a thing again. Kig says it was just the jump of Mario to 3D that makes it so influential. Now, if that was true, then people who do not play the original Mario wouldn't see Mario 3D as influential, and they do. And these are people who were not alive when Mario 3D came out, and even they consider it influential. Mario 3D is discussed in GDCs as being they talk about stuff that is well beyond what most developers talk about when it comes to the ability to do crazy stuff because of how they built the physics.
Right. That was lightning in a bottle.
It was lightning in a bottle.
Something crazy happened there.
Yeah. It was nuts. Let's see. New Mario Souls. Bitch, shut up. New Mario Souls man, can you imagine how horrendous that would be? That would
hitting bonfires.
Oh my God, you can't say it. Yeah, you have to go to a bonfire, and if you die, you have to go back to get all
everything
your coins.
Spawns. Yeah,
because they stay there. Wind Waker re-release. See, I'm not interested in re-releases too much, because they said they stated in their paperwork it's backwards compatible with all their old systems. I mean, it'd be great to see a re-release, obviously, but I would rather see them do a sequel to Mario. I'm trying to think if there's even Star Fox, somebody said.
Yeah, somebody said Metroid. New, Metroid Prime.
Yeah,
would be great.
Yeah, brand new. Yeah, brand new. It's called Metro Switch, and you can switch between I don't know why I keep bringing up the Switch thing, but I just want to see how it's used. Sorry.
Well, you bet you're gonna have the special editions. We had the Animal Crossing edition for Switch, a couple others. They love doing the limited edition, right? Like the special looks, and people buy them so much, man.
Reek 3D says Banjo-Kazooie. Banjo-Kazooie is owned by Microsoft now, but hey, hold on to your butts, because that don't mean shit anymore. So if Switch 2 releases and there's a new Banjo-Kazooie on it, it would not be the craziest shit that's happened this year. I feel like this year and last year have been so nuts that anytime I say that won't happen, a week later something weirder happens. So it's just
that's true.
Let's see. What else do we got here? Like a Dragon released a brand new a brand new trailer for the naval combat. That game's one of the next big ones to come out, man. Like a Dragon's gonna It's crazy.
AKA like a pirate.
Yeah, I mean, I'm mad that they didn't ask me what they should have named it,
Yeah,
personally.
they should ask you.
I'm mad that they didn't come to me and say, Carrick, what's your idea? I feel like most of us would agree that Like a Pirate's probably the best name. I just think that'd be hilarious if they called it Like a Pirate. They ignored the Like a Dragon. I think that the pirate game fits that character perfectly. It's just that I feel like that game has success written all over it. There's very few games that I even say that, and I didn't say it with like Man Who Erased His Name or Infinite Wealth, any of that kind of stuff. But when I look at Like a Pirate, which I'm just going to call it that now, when I look at it, I'm like, yeah.
Really?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
mean,
don't know
it
why
seems like a fun combo.
exactly,
For sure.
Johnny. And it's pirates, which has a I don't even know what the draw for pirates is. There's probably
There
a
is
psychology
something.
there that
Yeah,
I'm not aware of. Maybe I don't want to
absolutely.
know, but
Yeah,
yeah.
some
Maybe
primal thing.
well, get primal. A bunch of guys on a boat for a long period of time and some eye
Yep.
patches. I don't know, but it's definitely a thing that they have also not just phoned in. Like if you look at the systems they've got and the ideas that they've got, and even some of the PR I've got about what they're planning, what the systems in they just know how
Hmm.
to deliver it, man. How many times has Yakuza delivered a really amazing story?
Yeah, and for anyone who has played like those games, their mini games are out of this world good.
Oh,
So
dude.
imagine what they can do in the context of pirates, ships, sea, all that. I
And that
mean, it's
character
huge.
who's
Yeah.
been crazy since day one. That's how you view pirates anyway. For the most part, I think people view pirates as like overtly, just out there in their actions, like really, really emotive, that kind of stuff. That character's already been a crazy man it just fits perfect, man. And
Yeah.
also, I don't know if you know this, but I mean, it's in the trailers, it's not a spoiler, but he starts with amnesia and you're relearning this character, but you're also, from what I'm understanding, people are telling you about yourself. So some of the stuff we don't know about him, some of the stuff that we haven't known is it's going to be a sense of discovery in two ways: traveling around in a ship and discovering things, but also discovering more about that character. That I mean, I would say he's got to be. If you look at the top 5 most popular characters in Yakuza, other than the two mains, if you leave 3 spaces, isn't he in the top
Yeah, I
3
think so.
for everybody? Like
For
just
sure.
I feel so. Yeah.
A
I
very
don't know.
likable character.
Jesus Crust says, other than Sea of Thieves, there's no good recent pirate game. Incorrect. Incorrect. Shadow Gambit is fan-fucking-tastic. And it's pirate
Oh,
ninjas. Couldn't even
yeah.
be a better mix. Pirate ninjas. And they're out of business. Minmay Games. Desperados and Shadow Gambit. Shadow Tactics, I think they also did. Great pirate game. Sid Meier's Pirates are solid games. Yeah. Yeah, back 30 years ago. Sid Pirates, that's old, but I agree. Those are some ancient ass games though. Ancient. What else we got here, Johnny? Okay, let me make sure I've answered the Discord guys before we break off and start talking about some crazy shit that I want to talk about. Because I posted it I don't know if you remember, I posted something cool in general.
Yeah.
Dark Matter Stars. Okay, let me look here because I asked people if they had questions on Twitter. Twitter says, what do we think about Ninja Gaiden? Infinite Wealth? Okay. Just started Final Fantasy. Okay, so no questions there, no questions there, no questions there. All right. So, do we have anything else game-wise before we go off the deep end here and start talking about metaphysical shit?
So I was thinking game-wise, I had a question for you. So when I was playing the first Berserker demo and stuff, I was thinking, is the bonfire mechanic really needed? What would happen, do you think, if you had a Souls game? So imagine maybe some of the Jedi games, but without the bonfires and done in a way where you're basically progressing through the areas, meaning, you kill the enemies and they're dead, right? So you're kind of like clearing your way through the area instead of having these respawning enemies. Is there something there I'm missing? Why that's a integral part of the experience, the respawning part, outside of just being able to farm them, obviously. But
well, you brought up something I wasn't going to say, the farming. I'd forgotten obviously that's why it's used.
Right. I
I,
mean, that's some utility, I guess, of that. But
I think we will see a game that tries it by being big and maybe dying and coming back in certain places. I think the bonfire really is just a teleporting save game spot for death. But I think Black Myth proved you don't need to go back and get souls, and it proved it well. It proved it so well that when you play a game where you do have to, it feels old already. And that's just me
yeah,
being honest. I'll just say for me, some people may like it, but as a mechanic, corpse runs now feel old to me. They feel like an older game
I
design
agree.
decision that isn't required.
And
Uh,
especially the inconvenience of having to go into a boss arena, look for where your
oh, where
souls
you
fell
die? Yeah,
inside the arena
yeah,
while the boss is attacking you.
right.
That to me is just not a fun.
It's not.
That's not difficulty. That's not fun. That's nothing. That's just an inconvenience,
Yeah,
really. Right?
yeah. No, I mean, I agree.
So we've seen evolutions of that. Like Lies of P puts your souls outside of the boss arena, like right at the
Yeah,
door.
right.
So
Very
at
smart.
least if you don't want to go in, maybe you want to go back and explore some other thing,
Right.
you can do that, right? You can get your souls back. But I'm with you. I think that losing souls as an idea, like it had some merit, but in practice and in execution, it's more limiting than it is fun and risk versus reward. I don't think it really pays off that much.
Yeah, I don't, or that it's needed. They make
Yeah,
it pay off because it's integral to what they're doing, but it's not needed anymore. I think at the time it was a really good plan, and we got a bunch of games like it. But now we're starting to see multiple companies do different things, which I think is also great. I won't not play a game that has it. It's just when I do play it, I'll be like, harumph, when I know it's going to pop up, I'm like, huh. So, but
yep.
back to the real question, or not the real question, but the more crux of it, like, yeah, we have to break down why, and anybody in chat can do this. Why is the bonfire there outside of that? Well, the bonfire is there also for upgrading. It's also for, in some games, switching out classes and weapons because they don't allow you to do it in the field because they want it to be restrictive. It
Yep.
is also for story cutscene moments because you go back, because one of the problems with a Dark Souls style game or those kind of games is sometimes you would have to lock a place out to be where the cutscene triggers. Sometimes you do that with bosses, but you might not want to do that when somebody is engaging in an open world because it might be kiting somebody. And if you're kiting an enemy and a cutscene starts, and I've had that happen in other games that aren't even Dark Souls, just open world, that's infuriating. Because like you'll go into a quest area on accident because you're kiting somebody in Aloy in Horizon, and it'll start a cutscene. There's a couple times where that can happen, and I hated that. I was like, dude, that's not why I went there. I need to sort of be able to tell it. This is why I'm here. So bonfires are for that. Bonfires. So there's three things bonfires are for that are outside of your resurrection point.
Right. So they're good as checkpoints, but do you think the
Yeah.
respawning of enemies is
Yeah,
necessary?
that's the best question, right? Well, I think Star Wars Survivor and Star Wars Fallen Order are much worse games because of the respawning.
I really think so.
Much
Yeah.
worse than they would be if they had not gone
If
with
it was a
some kind
pure
of,
adventure
yeah.
where you're making your way through this level and as you go, you're eliminating enemies, maybe new enemies come at different regularities, I'd be okay with that. But the idea of like you're sitting down to meditate and all enemies reappear, it
I think the biggest problem
doesn't
too
really
is that if the
work.
game is difficult, enemy to enemy to enemy, which is what Dark Souls is known for, most random enemies can kill you quickly if you don't still continue doing what you're supposed to be doing. That is not meted out whatsoever in Fallen Order or Survivor at all. They're fairly easy enemies.
They're fodder.
Right.
Yeah, a lot of them.
So
Yeah.
that idea goes away. It doesn't make any sense, and it there's no really reason to do that. The only thing you could do is just say you died. You died, and instead of saying it's a Dark Souls style death, you go back to your older games where that's just a checkpoint, and those
Yep,
guys are alive for
redo
that.
the
Right.
area.
But
Yep.
I think those games are worse for their decisions to sort of net in the Dark Souls stuff into a Star Wars game. There was all kinds of oddities that game felt, and Survivor continued, even though they tried
Yeah.
to fix it. But your other games, I could see other kinds of systems. Like we were talking in the Discord one day about imagine a game world. I'm making up a game world, but imagine a game world where there's magic and tech, and the major nations have either mechs or magic giant creatures and they fight. Your mech could be your saving spot. And so you leap into the mech, you do stuff in there, right? So that's a mobile save spot. You still run into all kinds of issues where if the game world isn't big enough, then you could do a lot of runs with no enemies in there. So what I would rather have is instead of spawning enemies in the same spot, Johnny, I would rather have enemies that could be delivered. If it's a military game, enemies can fly in on spaceships or whatever and be dropped off, right? Like Halo would drop off,
Yeah.
enemies in certain spots. I'm okay with that. You go in, you have a chance. Not all the time, you have a chance. That does then remove it from the dark. See, the one thing is the more we remove, you remove bonfires, you remove corpse runs, suddenly you're not even playing a Dark Souls style game. So I think at some point, if you were, if you look at the 3 or 4 reasons bonfires are used,
I still think some of those things are just vestiges of the old games, like you were talking about. Like losing your souls. I get the idea of risk of reward, so maybe that needs to stay. But some convenience, some quality of life needs to be added. Like for example, if I'm trying to learn a boss, the last thing I want to do is have to do a corpse run from the bonfire to the boss, especially if it's a long distance.
right?
And even Wukong does this a couple times. It's pretty good at placing
Being
you close to the boss.
Yeah, I know where you're going with that.
Which is nice. There have been a couple in Wukong that were bad, but let's be honest, a lot of the Souls games, you have to run through a bunch of enemies very often to get back to the boss.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that to me is just added fat. Like you could just thin that out.
I mean, who knows? Because I'm sure Black Myth has caused people to look, and so has Jedi Survivor, because we've heard it. We've heard devs saying, we've seen them try it, and it worked in some ways, didn't work in others. Developers are always getting ideas from others. I'm sure we'll see other ideas that
I think so.
Have, I mean, even temporary bonfires, or there's all kinds of stuff you could do. But I do think that the corpse run mechanic, when combined with all kinds of other stuff, see, this is one of the problems, is because the question does come up at times: how many similarities does something need to be considered Dark Souls? Because if there are only a couple, Monster Hunter is very close to a Dark Souls game now.
Souls-like,
right?
Or light.
So how many comparisons does something need before it now is a like or light, right? I would consider like being a better conversation piece than light. Like, because you can just add in how many things are like for like, and you say that's a Souls-like. I think it has Souls-like tendencies now, if that makes sense. Monster Hunter, and I like it, but I'm saying it always has, in fact. But I don't know, dude, because I just feel like a lot of devs understand that. They know where you're coming from. A lot of devs will state it in PR to me. They'll be like, hey, we know not everybody wants to play a nut-crunching Dark Souls corpse run, so we've done this or we've done that. So a lot of devs, maybe they're not AA, maybe they're not even
they're aware of
maybe
it.
they're indie, they're aware of it, and they feel it. Because a lot of them, they see the stuff that's great about a Dark Souls. They're great. I diss on Dark Souls a lot, but it's like I love 3. I like what is it?
Surge and a few of the others.
Sekiro. So
Sekiro.
Those games, they are great, but dude, there are times where when you face off against a guy that, let's say it's a guy that you don't feel is fair, like the ogre. We've talked about this, you see, and you're like, I got to go fight this guy again. Or you get the people who after a while run past everybody, and you're like, what is this adding to the experience that I'm just running past? I'm doing the same pattern over and over. Yeah, I think devs definitely see it. I mean, I'm sure they do, because like I said, I covered the one that had the 4 characters where you could switch between 4 in the middle of the attacks, and it was a Dark Souls style, and they had decided that they didn't want your classes to be back at the, they didn't want it to be a weapon switch or class switch back at a bonfire. They wanted it to be there in the game. So you had, as you found enemies in the game, or characters in the game world, you took their souls in, and now you could be a warrior or a bowman, and you could switch out during mid-attack. Did it work well? It did not.
Right.
But
so that's an example of like yeah, they had an idea, a spin on it, and maybe it did or didn't work out, but that was kind of the inspiration. And then similarly, we might see people have an annoyance with some of these things we've mentioned and make a game around not having that.
Not having it, yeah.
Yeah.
Jesus says, I don't mind bonfires, but if they're going to stay, Corpse Run needs to go. So there we go. There's one.
Yeah.
Ben says, first Jedi game for me was mediocre at best. Did not try second. Dead Captain says, agreed. Runbacks need to stay last gen. T-Monk says, Stakes of Marika are that quality of life you're asking for. Okay. Ransom says, Elden Ring was way better with that. T-Monk says, they completely removed the need for corpse runs, at least for bosses and most major encounters. This is him talking about Stakes of Marika. Stakes of Marika. Let's see. Dylan says Dark Souls 2 corpse run was silly. Run through a literal trap hallway. Oh, yeah. Okay, I know what you're talking about. Damn, I forgot that one. Dylan says Neo 2 is always a game I argue diverges enough from Souls to be its own thing. I mean, Neo 2 is probably my favorite Souls-like game. I don't feel like it diverges. Okay, but it doesn't matter if I feel that way. I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying. It changed some things.
Yeah. For sure, like, the pacing of combat and everything is different, but you can also find so many similarities that it would be easy to put it in that category, for sure.
Ransom says, last Berserker lets you keep boss XP after you die.
Okay, yeah, that was an interesting iteration. So listen to this, right? So let's say you're grinding a boss because it's tough, you're learning the moves and everything. One thing is that the checkpoint was right outside the tough boss, which already a plus. Mm-hmm. The other thing is the souls lost are outside the boss arena, another improvement. Mm-hmm. But then what's really cool is every time you fight the boss, you earn more souls.
Okay.
And if you die, the souls are outside of the arena. So you're actually accumulating both experience for your skill points for different combos and stuff you can unlock, and souls, which allow you to increase your stats.
But if you don't defeat the boss, how do you get stuff from the boss?
You're still earning. Every fight against the boss, you still earn. So what that looks like in practice is that if you're really stuck on a boss, and you fight him like 20, 30 times, you can actually level up quite a few times out of that. So you'll maybe have more HP as a result, or you'll have more damage, and that will allow you to gradually get better at doing the boss by having, better stats, access to new skills, being able to respec all your skills and everything, and just try a different style.
So in that game, would you say then that you're getting experience not for killing, but hitting? Because the boss gives you experience. It has to be for what? Hitting? Just hitting?
For attempting the boss. That's the best way I can describe it. Yeah, I don't know exactly how all that's going to work in the full game.
Right.
But yeah, that I noticed it because I had to retry the final boss quite a few times. Yeah.
I don't mind that. I mean, I don't. It depends on how every other system works.
It wasn't enough to make it like, hey, I'm just becoming OP because I'm sucking at this boss. It was more like a bit of a catch-up mechanism. In case you got to the boss a bit too weak, it allows you to like catch up a little bit.
I think that's fine. It depends on how it all works together. That sounds like a cool idea. Whether the other systems, like you just said, because I was thinking, depends on how it comes together, because it could make you too powerful. You could just hit the boss once, go back, hit the boss once, but time versus the reward for that might be low.
You gotta get killed still, so yeah.
Somebody says, remember Kena, the Bridge of Spirits? That's Dark Souls for kids. Yeah, Kena. I enjoyed that game. Yeah, I enjoyed the game, but it was fun. Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah.
I think also, this is what's so cool, dude. I don't care if somebody doesn't like it or likes it. But the great thing about Black Myth and these other games that do well is it's not just like it's not just that, let's say, a Dark Souls fan likes it, or that a person who didn't like Dark Souls likes it. It's the idea that when it does well, people talk about the systems in it. And then those systems become more familiar to people who maybe don't want to go away from Dark Souls. And people can say, this worked, actually. And then there's a familiarity there, and there's a discussion around it that wouldn't happen if you didn't see that success. Because you wouldn't have an example of it. It's a good, I like those games that do really well like that have an example, 3, 4, 5 different examples of changes where maybe only one works for you. Maybe all of the others don't work, but one works for you in Black Myth. And you can say, look how well it did. This one change really works for me. I hope they put it in other games. And the great thing is most developers hear that stuff, read it, see it, and decide, and they do the same thing. You know, and you know how we know? Because they all did Dark Souls once that became big. They're obviously listening. We got a Star Wars game that's got Dark Souls stuff in it. Like, obviously they thought that was going to be, for them, a big deal. But when you look at what we're seeing now with all these games and some weird ones doing well, that's very cool too, because, you know, all it does is give devs other ideas. And the idea of mixing and matching different things like this boss thing, I sort of like it. I don't know what you're talking. I mean, I get what you're talking about. I would need to see it in action.
You would need to experience it.
But I like the idea of that. And then if you look at that and you say, okay, well, what if, you know, there's that, and then we do this over here, and then you have to make sure there's risk versus spamming. That's one more idea that you could do. Yeah, that's cool. I not a thought about it. The other thing that I would say, I mean, we can see generically big changes is when you look at Monster Hunter allowing multiple weapons. I think that's, I mean, when you look at it, I would say, to me at least, that's a huge change. It's a big enough one that you can say isn't just them waking up and saying, hey, it's where they've looked at other games that have done well, or looked at their past games and said, what doesn't feel like it makes a ton of sense right now, and this is one of the changes. Making camps anywhere in that game is also, hopefully that didn't kick us. I just got a disconnection over there. I don't know if there's a particular thing that they've said of why they do the mobile tents, or if you can put them anywhere. I guess that's my big question for Monster Hunter, because they said you could like camp anywhere, but I want to know if anywhere means, can you camp like right outside? Because I'm pretty. Didn't they say monsters can attack your camp, or am I misremembering that? Because I
didn't see that. That would be really interesting.
Because Dragon's Dogma has that. Remember, Dragon's Dogma had things where you could go to camps.
Yeah,
and
I got attacked all the time.
Yeah, it's awesome, man. Mecha says, like, how cool would it be if your character has a sword, he plunges into the ground, starting a fire. The fire creates a save area. The fire shields you from encounters. Yeah. I think those kind of things where the fiction equals the mechanic. Yeah. Dodger says, I hope Eternal Strands will feel like Kena.
Eternal Strands.
Eternal Strands is I guess you'd call it WoW looking graphics, but it's like WoW, but a third person game where you can, there's some bosses you can climb up. It's got a lot, if that makes sense. It's like when you see the trailer, it's got a lot of other things mixed in. So we'll have to see how that,
Yeah, that's coming out in a few days, 28th of January.
Dude, I was looking at my list here. Listen to this, man. We have Sit Sleeper 2. You've got Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. You've got Eternal Strands, Sniper Elite. That's just the major ones.
Yep.
And what? 2 of those are long. Well, Eternal Strands, like, I don't know how, generally how long it's supposed to be, but somewhat big.
Right.
Kingdom Come 2 is obviously somewhat large. And then Sniper Elite Resistance, which is sort of like a Gears of War Judgment style for the sniper games. Not in that it changes a bunch of stuff, but in that it is a sort of a side title with a different character. Dylan says, Eternal Strands demo bosses were fun, but nothing else was doing much for me in it. Dodger says, I'm currently playing through Citizen Sleeper 1 to get ready for 2. Great game. Did you play Citizen Sleeper, Johnny?
Nope, I have not.
Too slow for you think?
I don't know. I didn't actually check it out. I didn't look into it back in the day.
This narrative one looks
game. Quite good, though.
Yeah, it's cyberpunk style narrative game.
You're covering this one, right? I think 2? I signed the patron. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the plan. Yeah, just cover it. The Shadows thing popped up when I wasn't expecting it to, but yeah, my plan is to cover at least 2 or 3 of those that we talked about. It's just depending on today and then this weekend.
Have you already planned out February, because it's going to be such a big month for
I have
titles.
I have February somewhat planned out. You never know what you're going to get. Aries says, I
Yeah.
love Sit Sleeper. Yeah, if anybody hasn't played, when I say it's a narrative game, I want to make sure that doesn't, it is a narrative game. I'm not going to lie and say it's not, but it's got enough that if you're a fan of like good narrative, cool story with some mechanics, but there is some reading involved, you should check out Sit Sleeper, at least at the very least, look at it on Steam. Yeah, my plan is to cover most of February. I mean, it's just me, so it's like when I look at some of the games, depending on when the code is available, if I get code, if I get responded to, most of the time I get responded to, but you know, occasionally they'll just shine me on. Somebody will be like, I don't like him. I'm just joking. Hopefully that never happens, but I'm sure it does. And just see what we can see there. I'm also expecting us to see a couple, not surprise games, but I'm expecting some games to catch on out of the blue in the next couple weeks, where maybe it's an indie game or maybe it's a game that people have been talking about for a while but didn't really think about it, and then it pops up and we're all sort of surprised by it, that kind of stuff. So that's just me saying I think that because it's happened lately. Pal World, Enshrouded, you know, there's been some indie game, there's simulator games. I did the February video, and there's that ambulance simulator. So listen to this. I do the February video, and the February video's got these AAA games, and Ambulance Simulator is the probably by 10 to 1 the #1 game either commented on, I was DM'd on, or tweeted about. That to me shows just how massive that entire genre is. Like, people were like, wait, what? I can like run around and be a like, what? And then other people were like, I'm a paramedic. It's boring as shit, but this looks awesome. And I'm just sitting there going, simulator games are so fun. Like you with House Flipper.
House Flipper, yep.
Power Wash Simulator. It came out of Power Wash Simulator wasn't even really PR'd much, and then they gave a couple people codes, and it was insanely ridiculous how that exploded.
It still is very popular.
It's still hugely popular. Yeah. And what is also hugely popular, by the way, probably one of the coolest things I have ever been a part of, is my patron. Come on by and join. If you get a chance, I would appreciate it. Dead Captain James, $5 super chat. It's patron link is in there. What would your dream game be? Mine would be Baldur's Gate 3 style of game with Path of Two Exile combat. So I'll tell you right now, that sounds cool. But if you want to play a Baldur's Gate world style that is more action-packed, play Icewind Dale. It was right after Baldur's Gate 2. It is much more combat-focused, but was still amazing story, and I personally believe it is better than Baldur's Gate 1. Maybe not 2. But it is fantastic. Older game, though. Yeah, dude, it's crazy. It's crazy. The sim game, like, I just did not expect the ambulance game to be the game that I got all these people saying. It's probably because many are already getting the ones that I covered. I think that's fair.
Yeah.
You know, but Avowed came up. I was surprised. Like, it seems like a lot of people just, I've saw a lot of previews of Avowed. I've not covered it, but I played it. I'm going to do coverage here soonish. And, like, there's a lot of titles out there, but I did not expect that fucking. I mean, paramedic. I guess it probably helps that game looks pretty fleshed out too. Like, they showed him driving around. It's not, sometimes you'll get like a supermarket simulator or whatever, and you look at it and you're like, I don't know if there's a lot of game.
And even that, dude, that was really popular too.
Okay, that was a bad one. I meant to say Space Market Simulator. That's the other one.
But that one looks on its face very basic.
Very basic.
It just so happened that people love doing it, but
yeah, Eagle said, or A1 Nangled. Is that even right? Angle? Is it just supposed to be Angle? I don't know. Icewind Dale 1 and 2 is pretty sweet recommendation. Great story. Yeah, they're awesome. They're awesome. They're fantastic.
So
games.
on that question though, I do have a dream game I've always thought about, Derek. So listen to this. You may not know the anime Evangelion or Evangelion.
I do know Evangelion.
You know about it?
Mm-hmm.
Where like these guys had the big like mech suits, right? Where there's a person inside controlling it.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's always like a one-on-one. So it's the big mech suit against a giant monster, like a kaiju style monster. And the monster designs were super creative, super cool and stuff. And I've always wanted to have a game about that, where it's you in the giant mech and you have all the buildings. You can walk around freely and you step on the buildings and destroy them. And like, I don't know, maybe you can roll, right? And just destroy a whole
Is
block.
there a comparison game or something that you can give me a comparison of what you've seen that you want it to somewhat mimic? Because right now, all I have is like
It's tough.
a guy in a suit smashing shit, which would not be bad, but I don't feel like
Honestly,
that's your
you're not
dream
too
game.
far off.
Okay.
The purpose is not smash shit, is to kill the kaiju. So you're defending Earth against these kaiju that pop up, right?
Mm-hmm.
So every time one of these monsters pops up, you go in there and your mission is to kill them.
Right.
But in so doing, you end up like destroying part of the city just as an aftermath type thing, which is also fun. So think of like I'm imagining in my head Earth Defense Force type thing in scale, where you have the city with destructible, stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But instead of a ton of enemies like in that game, you have one ginormous enemy. So I'm talking scale like the size of a skyscraper or something enemy. And you're big too, right? You're about that size too. Something that dwarfs the city itself.
Yeah.
Just the scale of that would be amazing.
Scale's been well represented in games like Black Myth. You saw some of the things in there, and you're like,
I haven't seen like I've
no,
seen
I'm
some
you know
of
what
them.
I'm talking about. Yeah, the one particular
some of the
thing
big
that you would see.
Bros, yeah,
they're doing well in the scale of games. I don't really have a dream game because I feel that the dream games that I used to have been surpassed in a couple places. Like I told you, I used to dream of a game that was like No Man's Sky. Now, No Man's Sky's combat is terrifyingly bad, right? But when I look at everything
the aesthetic,
else,
like the Flash Gordon,
in the moving around and the ability to just zen out and fly is great. And then you have the X games, X3, 4, well, maybe not 3, but you have, X4, you have the X games, which are very highly technical space games, which I love. Those are, but honestly, I think there's a gap. I've already said this. Cyberpunk, I think, is a gap. So there would be two types of games that I would be my dream game currently. One would be for Ubisoft to get their stuff right and do a futuristic Assassin's Creed, Cyberpunk, Templars, Assassins, future, true Cyberpunk, climbing up, glass skyscrapers, using all kinds of crazy weapons in the future. And it's like a mixture of Splinter Cell, Assassin's Creed, blah, blah, blah. The other would be a Shadowrun first-person shooter that delivered where Cyberpunk had said they were going to deliver and failed completely. I'm talking true Shadowrun style, magic, guns, future, but giving you a world that looked generally like Cyberpunk. Cyberpunk is great to drive around in, but whenever I see guys do something in Cyberpunk, this is the honest truth. I'm not being a jerk because I do like Cyberpunk generally now as a shooter. But do you know what you notice a lot of times when somebody wants to show you Cyberpunk? They're on a motorbike driving down a road. But the moment you interact with the NPCs, they do every NPC bullshit you see in every NPC game. And they start to fall apart, or they start doing stuff with pathing. They start having all of these issues. So to me, what I would like to see is a true game that goes to what Cyberpunk had said they were going to do, and see those skills incorporate in the real world with one thing that does not exist currently, and that's true destructibility without crushing the buildings. What I mean by that is, if I have gorilla arms, cybernetics, I want to be able to punch through a wall, but I don't want it to red faction the fucking thing, which had destructibility that was like graham crackers. Everything just fucking fell apart. Everything just went boom, and it fell apart. Just Cause is great, but at times when you blow something up in Just Cause, you're like, everything separates from everything else.
Everything is made out of like Lego or something.
Yeah. And even if you just modeled where your boards would be in a normal wall and you could only get through those, it would be good enough for me.
Yeah.
But to take the Cyberpunk / Shadowrun skills and abilities and have them actually interactive, I think we're well away from the technology where that is cost effective for anybody other than, honestly, Rockstar and maybe a massive Microsoft endeavor or a massive
that level of detail
Sony endeavor.
That I think that's why we've had so many indie Cyberpunk, because there you can do some of these things more on the just narrative games or point and click and stuff like that.
Dylan says, I need a Monster Hunter with Stardew Valley farming mechanics. That seems pretty good. I'm listening to this
Okay.
while working, and this convo seems meandering, or it's my attention. It's your attention. We've actually done a pretty good job moving from spot to spot. Ground fighting level, then Doom fighting massive demons. Still talking about Evangelion, I think. For my dream game, I just want SSX Tricky back. Alps also says, I've always said future AC would be sick. I would kill to see it. I mean, here's the thing, guys. It's okay. I think Assassin's Creed has gone so far off the reservation and did day one. I mean, it's not even real. It was never real. That I would be okay with a future one and just say this is a story. And just do it. If it was cool, it'd be good enough for me. Carrick can make a game within a game like the show Peripheral. Oh, yeah, game within a game. That is also something I would like to see. They tried it with the Mind Freaks or whatever in Cyberpunk, but they had to remove them. The what were those things you could go into and do you helped them solve a crime in Cyberpunk, and it was supposed to be like going into other people's memories. Anybody in chat remember what it's called? I think they removed them because of epilepsy warnings. They were Shadow Dance, something dance. Something dance. It's been a long time since I've done one because I don't even know how many were left in the game. Somebody's going to remember. Sorry, it's for sure my divided attention. No worries, man. I'm just teasing. We do have a tendency to meander, but we're not right now. I would say with future, like these people are talking about, there's all kinds of games we want to build on. I would also like to see a developer surprise me. I guess my dream game is also just that I'm surprised.
Yeah,
and
that's true.
Very often.
Yeah.
That would be that would sort of be amazing.
Something we haven't thought of.
Imagine sitting at an event and somebody's like, here's a game, and you see the trailer or whatever, and when you get done, you're like, wait, what? Like that.
Yeah.
Whether it be a mechanic or something that it doesn't feel like the mechanic is added to every other game we've ever seen, because that's what we currently see.
Dude, I just had an idea. What if, right?
Brain dance. Thank you, guys. Yeah, go ahead.
What if it's a game where you are a tiny von Neumann probe? So for people in chat who don't know, the idea of the von Neumann probe is just a little probe that's flying out in space, and it's able to go mine some material and then print a copy of itself
to continue
basically
the movement.
Right. And then now you have two. So now these two go mine some material, print themselves, and now you're growing exponentially, and you end up having all these probes running around, and they can do stuff. So they could, for example, build a superstructure. So maybe the game is about building something like a Dyson sphere, which would be, this structure around the sun that's like capturing all the energy or something. And you're like taking on this huge project and just multiplying yourself. And you see just the sheer numbers of the probes growing up and being able to do more stuff.
Do you know a game that could have been some of what we're talking about? I truly believe this. It did not. I understand that it did not, but it had some parts that excited me to no end, and that's Watch Dogs Legion. There were parts of Watch Dogs Legion with the tracking systems and the schedules and things that occurred when a character died in the game where you'd see the other character go to their grave. Weird little stuff where I was like, oh, shit. And this is why you hear me sometimes say it sucks so bad that when we have a failure now, we're just like, this is over. That wasn't a failure, but it wasn't a massive success. But I would love to see a game that incorporates the paranoia and the somewhat futuristic. It doesn't have to be 500 years in the future. I would like to see something like that again. But, that series is gone, from what I understand.
Yeah.
Everyone's talking about a future AC game. Why not an AC game set today? You'd be playing somebody named Luigi. I think technically when you look at like games set today, it's very difficult, man. I mean, GTA is going to have a hard time rendering out the reality of today's already batshit insane world. And they were smart as shit to pick Florida, because there's probably only 4 or 5 places in the world where you could say that's top tier fuckery over there. Like in where I am in Oregon, I can look over at Florida and go, there be monsters. Like there should just be a map, gridded map, like when old maps just said there be monsters at the ocean's edge. That's Florida. But there's very few places you can say that's a crazy place. Like that is that is batshit insane. So I think modern games are
True.
hard to do. I mean, what do you do with a
Yeah.
modern game? It's like you work a bunch, you miss
You're
your
going
tax,
to the supermarket.
you miss your tax date, you have to pay
Yep.
some fees. You buy some Bitcoin and it goes down the moment you buy it. I mean, fuck, we deal with that every day. Like, who wants to play that? I don't know. I feel like that to me is just.
Unless you can make a sim game out of that.
Well,
real life simulator.
But I mean, why would you, like, I'm not saying why, like, that's dumb. I'm just saying that I think that currently we live in a world where surprise is very limited. And I don't know how I would be, what I would engage in. I mean, I guess vicariously living as somebody else. So you'd have to have a simulator that was like Sims times 100. So like you could be a Kim Kardashian one day, you could be yourself another day, you could be homeless one day, you could be, you know, like almost a world that was simulated and you could jump into anybody's body, I guess. You do something like that. But see, do you know why I just said Legion earlier? Because that's what you can do in Legion. So we are talking about the same thing. Yeah. It's just the idea of jumping into multiple bodies. If I jumped into your body, what would happen? I would have to talk to myself on a fucking Friday. I already talked to myself on a Friday. Like, do you see what I'm saying? Like, it's like we already, there's a lot of stuff. Oh, I could go on Twitter. I already go on Twitter. There's nothing in the modern world that I would want to simulate too much. I don't know. It just feels weird. The idea of like jumping into somebody else's body and be like, oh, I got to listen to this fucking jackass talk about shadows all day. I already do that. Like, it just doesn't, it doesn't excite me. It doesn't excite me.
Yeah, there's a bit too much overlap, I guess.
There's a lot of overlap right now because news being so quick. That's why Florida always feels like a dark zone to me. Because I'll get news, right?
Anything could be happening.
Anything could be happening in Florida. Like, yes. You'll be all, grandma gets killed by alligator.
Checks out.
Guy eats other dude's face. And then, you know, tidal wave hits or whatever and destroys housing community, and guy surfs on it because, you know, he was challenged to, and he's an influencer, filmed it and was killed. And all that, I would not bat if you told me that, I would not even question. I would go look for that news. I would believe all those bits of news. That's how crazy Florida. They picked a good, you know, those guys, smart move. There's very few places they could pick. That's the other thing. As we're rolling into this, any ideas from anybody, or you Johnny, anything on GTA 6 where I think a trailer's coming soon? We're hearing like little, you know, rumors. I think it might be about time in the next month or two to see something. I could be wrong on that because I really am just asking. Is there something you want to see from GTA 6's trailer? Is there anything you want them to dive into particularly that you'd like to see more of? If they show, I think
showing more of the characters, what we're gonna be playing as, what's gonna be the setting. You mean? Yeah. What do they do? You know, what kind of person are they? Are they a piece of shit? Are they just in hard times? What's going on?
Really, you want to see that? You got some balls. You got some balls because I think a lot of people don't. Well, I think a lot of people feel that since they saw that, like, she was talking to a psychiatrist, I believe. In the last one, they had the little the lovey moment in the bed, and then they were running around doing a crime, obviously. I think some people are just like, they're criminals and in love, done. And I don't want to see anymore. So I rarely see people say they want to see more. But I agree with you, by the way. I'm not actually disagreeing with you. I just never thought you'd say that. For me, I think it's time, straight up. If this trailer just opens up and says GTA 6, and it just says, it's just an overview, and somebody says, just some of the things you can do in GTA 6. And it's just some of the activities. Doesn't have to be all of them. Because I want to, the activities are what drive so much that goes on in GTA 5 to me. And the idea of seeing the fucking fan boat that we saw in the trailer, to see what you can do there. Can you catch wild animals? Like it certainly seemed to indicate in that original trailer that might be a side job. I would like to see just that. And here's why. Because I think it fits two things. Number one, it tells the player what are some things that they engage in. Number two, they can't not show what's going on in the world by showing those. So you can see the other stuff. I think that
you can tell a lot,
right? But
by
if
the activities.
If you do the characters, they could put them in cutscenes. You wouldn't see very much. That's one of the reasons why the story ones I always get a little mad, because I'm like, this isn't showing me the world. But if you just say, here's some activities, you show somebody doing, I can't remember the sport, but there's the one sport that's popular in Florida where they have
Yep.
like the hook thing. We talked about this.
What does it look like for you to go and buy a burger, or like go in and
some
do
soccer?
something?
Can you join the YMCA? Can you fucking go and do these boat races? Can you fight?
Yep.
Can you fight animals? I didn't mean fight animals. Can you like, is one
Sure.
job to? And then they showed Twitter, or they showed some kind of social media, and then they showed the monster truck races. Dude, imagine all you see is black, and you hear like whoa, 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 and it's like some of the activities, and you just see that fucking that thing go in, smash through a park, and it's like, here are 5 or 6 activities. Rugby, that's one. Like, dude, I'm see,
Yeah.
I got myself excited. See, if I was, this is what I would. I would
That's a
do
good
that
way
kind of
to
shit
show
because
stuff.
It's a good
Yeah.
way to show
So-
stuff. Yeah, without like breaking any. You're not like saying. You're not like showing these long scenes of people walking, so some jackass like me can zoom in
Yeah.
on a chick's legs and say her kneecaps don't have enough polygons. Instead, you're just like, these are some of the things
That's
you can
cool.
fucking do.
Yeah, I would love to see as well, like a continuous shot of what it looks like for you to, wake up in your house. Maybe you're able to
Oh,
have some breakfast or
yeah.
do something. You go out on the street, you get in your vehicle, you go somewhere.
Mhm.
Maybe you do something. Maybe you buy some food, and then maybe you go to the gym, or like maybe you just like a flow.
A day in the
of
life of.
almost like a vlog, like a day in the life.
I'm gonna tell you also, the one reason I want to see the activities thing is because I think that'll inform us. When you have 2 characters that are possibly criminals, and they might be hunted by the law, just like we saw at times in GTA. If they are hunted by the law, or this stuff happened prior to the game starting, then the activities might feel weird if you've decided to play lacrosse when the cops have a fucking warrant out for your arrest. So to be able to see those activities might inform us a little bit about the story even, and go, okay, there are downtime. There are times where you're because I can't even tell if you're hunted in that. It looks like you might be. It looks like it might be a relationship gone wrong. We don't even know, right? We don't even know what it really is. So some of the activities I think would inform us and go, okay, there's downtime enough to do this. There's downtime enough to do this. Your
True.
day in the life of would be cool because you'd be able to see like,
if you're going bowling, that means there is some.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
That's
you're
exactly
not
where
in
I'm going
complete, survival
anarchy
mode.
and survival mode, right? Where you're all,
Yeah.
well, why would I bowl if I'm, these guys over here, the
Right.
cops are waiting outside and just going like, dude. Somebody said improve. I agree with this. McMuffin, perfect username, says improved gunplay. GTA 5 and RDR2 have clunky gunplay, especially on console. See, I agree with that. I would like to see. I don't know how you do it, 'cause third-person gunplay is notoriously not great, unless you have the very few games that have that's only their thing, and it's not all
Yep.
about exploring. So I would agree with that. I think improved gunplay. It would be fun to see what you can do. That's the other thing, Johnny. If you're on the run for this crime and the entire game's on the run, then are you going to want to grab guns and do all these other crimes or whatever? There's all kinds of thought processes around the narrative we don't know, but
Yeah.
it's going to be exciting to see. And if we see an entire day in the life of, you can also then assume, well, this guy's waking up making some fucking eggs over easy. He's not stressed about somebody showing up at his house. So
Yeah.
maybe we have a little bit of data that maybe the crime is at the end, or maybe it happened prior. I don't even know. We know it's 2 characters. Are they playable all the time? Switch outable all the time? What do they have as skills? Because remember, Franklin, Michael, and Trevor didn't have, like, there was no really skill. It wasn't like
no.
It wasn't like an Assassin's Creed where each one of them had a certain fucking spin kick that was specific to them. Like, will this do that? Will this have it where the girl can do stuff, and will we like that? I mean, that's the other thing. I want that in Assassin's Creed Shadows. I don't know if I want it in a GTA.
Right.
Because
I want the girl to be able to drive. Now
Yeah.
I'm being sexist, but whatever.
No, I know what you
insert
mean.
Whatever
Any activity.
scenario.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Because oh my God, though, dude. Any activity. I was thinking about when you could beat up prostitutes. I was like, imagine the
Sure.
girl can get prostitutes in the game. They're scissoring in the backseat. Anyway, Agent 47 could blend in with the people. The 2 characters in GTA 6 will be able to as well. Yeah. Unfortunately, let's hope that doesn't happen, because if that's been an issue with Agent 47 since day one. 6'6" random dude. He's also an assassin. I don't think
Perfectly
they're supposed to be
blends in.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Ghost Recon Breakpoint is tight. Wouldn't translate to a Rockstar game. I think Ghost Recon Breakpoint less so to me than Wildlands, but I do agree that it would be cool to see one of them do, like Rockstar try that kind of stuff. Both of them have somewhat good shooting, yeah, as third-person games.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's what they are. They don't really simulate a world with people fucking walking around
Yes.
doing their jobs, you know? Like that's the thing.
Right.
Dude, it's going to be insane to see that game is a world changer for the industry. Did you see this? Let's talk about this shit, man. So I get where they're coming from. Multiple different industry like vets who talk about the cost of game are all saying they believe that a lot of developers hope GTA comes in at $100 because it will then somewhat normalize the price of games. Let me Is that as fucking absolutely crazy sounding to you, or am I completely not understanding that sentence? Because 100 from them would not normalize $100 games anywhere else.
Right. Yeah.
Like, does that seem odd to you that, like, would it normalize anything? It wouldn't normalize a single thing to me. It's a game that's been in making for like, I don't know. I don't know how long it's been in making, 9, 10 years, whatever, since preliminary discussions. Like,
Yeah.
it seems weird, right? The idea that 100.
Yeah. I think claims of quad A games notwithstanding, uh, no game is in the realm of what's being created there.
Right. Right.
And so, yeah, it's not like they're paving the path to a plethora of other $100 games. If that's what it turns out to be, I don't want to see $100 price tag on it. But
Yeah. Yeah.
if it turns out to be that, I don't think a bunch of other studios will be aiming for that. It's just not realistic.
No, man. That would be like saying that one running back who, gets in and gets an amazing contract means all contracts go up. It usually takes that does have a knock-on effect for some, but it takes many years, and they also have to display talent. That's the other thing. Just because it's $100 doesn't mean Carrick's game where you go out there and simulate a fucking ladybug for 10 hours would be worth $100. It doesn't make any sense. That's such a fucking crazy ass idea. What I do see is them doing something special for early access. I do see them doing that. I see them saying something like, if you buy the premium edition, which includes a statue of the chick's butt or something, like, I have no clue, right? But it would also include, because they do online late, it would also include the beta tester program where you get to go in and try out the game early and help us improve it. They're going to sell it, right? It's not going to just be early access. They'll try to sell it at $100, and they're going to find a way to make that cheap ass statue so that the $100 is easier to get to as pure profit. Like that, I could see them doing that, especially with online notoriously being late for their games. But dude, $100 for that game, I don't even know if I rate games on a buy. If that was $100, I don't even know what it would need for me to say that was worth it. That would be ridiculous. I don't even, and I'm looking forward to it. And even I would be like, what?
Yeah. Because a single game, right? $100. That's,
I mean, a $30 premium
insane
to the others. And, and I'm being generous there, not indicating that we have many games that are $49. And I like them, by the way. I like them. I like them as a developer. I like their games. But that's ridiculous. Like, that's, goddamn, I hope we're not at that point. Like, to where that would just change everything. Let's see. Rick says industries will then call their games quadruple A. Do you have to go to the bathroom? Because we're going for a while. Do you have to go pee?
I'll let you know. I think I'm holding on like a champ for now, but
Oh, okay. Dominic says, who's pushing this GTA 100? It's been multiple, market, like somebody said, there was like, I think one marketing analyst had said it, but we've also discussed, I think Abzi on a Wednesday podcast, like almost 2 years ago, we were saying like, will they do a premium like at 80? And this was prior to the $69 games being sort of regular. And even we were still saying, you can't just throw it up there, because fans will get it, but other people with FOMO will get it, but you are actually that is a actual statistic. Money is a statistic. It's not about desire. There is available money. And if somebody does not have an available 100, then you are restricting your purchase base versus your expected 69 or 59. We've even seen 69 causing issues. Some people have a very specific purchase amount each month that they can purchase.
Yeah.
Like I've seen people in our Discord who have basically, I would say, a general fund of an exact amount that they can spend. And so that person would be removed.
I mean, listen, if anyone can get away with it, it's them.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So if they do it, like you say, probably most people will still buy it. But
most people who can buy it.
Who can buy it. Yeah.
Who can buy it. And that is, there is no way you can point at that factually and say you are not artificially restricting because you are outside any expected norm at that point. And that's why I don't think they'll do it. I think they'll have a $69 version that'll be normal.
I think
then they'll have a $100 version that they'll sell to you.
A bunch of.
They'll be like Rockstar
inflated
socks
with a bunch of stuff. Yeah.
Oh, you know it, right? You know it. It's gonna be crazy. There's gonna be, or let's hope this doesn't happen. No. I don't even want to say that. That's a terrible idea. So no. Yeah, I would say online early. Blah blah blah. I don't know why I was even gonna say it. I don't think they would do what I was gonna suggest, but it was just a dumb idea. Yeah, dude, it's exciting to me to see it, and see that excitement around it. Switch 2 is exciting. Both of those are super exciting. But if either are over the price that you can even get, you're restricting something. And we have the same with Switch 2.
Do you think the Switch is gonna go? Have we heard anything about price? Do you think it's gonna go like up to 500?
450 makes complete sense. It's what I've pretty much assumed. Since we were done talking with Reg was on the podcast. And we were talking about Switch Pro. Remember back in the day when they thought there was going to be a Pro, like a middle, and it turned into how many Switches are there? The lean? No, there's like the mini.
There's the OLED.
The OLED.
The non-Switch.
Yeah. Oh yeah, right. Even though they had the commercial still, click. You're like, bitch.
Light. Yeah, light.
The light.
There we go. Stream light.
So,
Switch,
I think 450 is just, I don't see them not going to that. That's what I've heard. That's what I had heard. What, March of last year, I think?
Yeah,
that
makes sense.
Yeah. 450 is it's a new system. It's going to hook up to to your TV.
And it's their flagship. It's always going to be up there.
Yeah.
In price.
Switch Lite. Thank you. It was Switch Lite. Is that what it's called? So you had. So
Switch
what's
Lite,
the OLED called? Switch OLED?
OLED.
Is it just?
Yeah.
This is why when people laugh at me for calling things Switch 2 blah, 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 I don't feel stupid for it because their naming convention usually is what it is.
Yeah,
it is a lighter Switch. They could have called it Switch Small. It would have been the same thing, but I think Switch Lite works better. I mean, they never really change up their naming convention when it comes to didn't they have a Nintendo XL even? Which was the larger DS.
It was literally just a bigger.
It was looking at a sizing chart and calling it the next. Like they don't fuck around.
T-shirt size.
Yeah. People here are saying. So one person says, "Oof" on 450. I think is what Ben's saying. Where Reek says 450 is a solid price. Scissoring early access. Jeff says, yeah. Fine. Oh, so by the way, Jeff actually is pretty close to what I was going to suggest. I don't know why I was going to suggest this, but I was thinking, dude, I don't even know why I'm saying this. Like, it doesn't make any sense, but my brain said, what if some activities were restricted at the starting?
You could start with a garage. If you pay like the special edition, maybe you have a garage to store cars.
No way. No. We don't want. Like,
I'd be pissed, dude.
I wouldn't even be pissed. I think the world would be like that. That's.
Yeah.
No.
Maybe a car you could have, or a bike. Maybe have a
car or a
motorbike
bike
you
is fine.
start with.
I was thinking activities, which is when he said scissoring when he was joking. But I was like, what if you could only bowl early? If it just didn't make any sense. I was like, dude, that was a stupid thing for even me to think about. That would be horrendous. It would be horrendous as an idea. On the other hand, if they had scissoring DLC, I do think it would sell well. Just saying, I'd buy it. $100 for a nude modded version of GTA 6. Would you buy that? So let's say GTA 6, $100 gets you a nude mod. Johnny.
Probably not, man. What are
you?
Are you
Johnny,
even playing the story? Dude, okay, I get a bad rap, but I'm not
you
this
get
sort of
the rap.
degenerate.
I don't know if it's bad. You get the rap. Like
uh,
$100 nude
nah.
mod, I believe would sell like
I would actually probably
That's so
buy
dumb.
it if it was like cosmetic stuff, like skins, different clothes and
I
cars
would
and
too.
stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
I would be more compelled by that probably.
Yeah, activities is a bad idea though. I just
Yeah,
that is fucking
activities.
like just the idea. It's like one guy's able to bowl and the other guy's like not able to bowl. I'd be all what? Yeah, Anti Sky says Johnny would 100% do it. See, fucking that's what I'm saying. I know he says it's a bad rap, but I'm like, dude, you make your own. I'm just saying you've created it. No, you haven't.
I might check it out for science. I mean, we have to discuss it in the podcast.
I would check it out as like my excuses. I'd be like, well, I'm a reviewer.
We have to cover it.
I got to check
Derek,
out.
we have a responsibility here.
I'd zoom in and I'd be like, technically, that's not trimmed enough.
Right.
People would be like, what's he talking about? I'd be pissed if they locked jiggle physics behind a paywall. Yeah, physics is going to be a big one for a simulated game like that, right? Because they've always done fairly good job with physics. 4 had some wonky car physics, but a lot of people liked it. GTA 5 has good physics compared to, let's say, its equivalence would be your Saints Row. I do want to know how physics are going to be handled. Collision detection, collisions, pedestrian traffic. Are we going to see dogs? I think one thing that's always been missing is people walking animals in these big cities, which is quite notorious.
And doing stuff, by themselves, like, them having their own, like, you
doing
see some
what
of
by
that
themselves. What would? Do you
no,
mean
no, not like that.
Oh, okay.
Hey,
I'm sorry. The way you said it, I was anyway. What do you mean? What do you mean doing stuff by themselves?
someone going about their life and doing something in the street. So maybe someone is, looking at their phone and doing something. Another person is eating a burrito.
What about
livelihood.
Legion? Legion had your time scale, and you could actually track somebody doing everything. I don't need GTA to simulate all that. That's pretty ridiculous, right? But I do like your idea of this character. If you walked behind him, he had a generalized schedule, and he went.
And if you watch him for 5 seconds, it looks like he's doing something.
Right.
The illusion breaks if you're just, following him around for 10 minutes. But
I agree with all that. I think that'd be cool. I mean, it's really going to be up to the systems, their lowest end system they're trying to deliver it on, which will be a PC with a low end CPU GPU, and will be the Series S, right? It's both those.
Yeah.
So we have to know, what they can get in the memory, what they can get when it comes to.
Yeah, that's gonna be a bitch, right? To get it to run on the Series S.
Series S and low end graphics cards in particular.
Yeah. Rough.
Because the amount of just draw and fill rate when you have a crowd is ridiculous already. And what they showed in that video was like, and then you put physics on it. Little what are these? Mobile Jaguar APUs are just going to be like, what the fuck?
Yeah, I'm hoping they will have a switch for like just density of like people. So if you have a good system, maybe you can have a bunch of people doing random stuff on your CPU and like memory and everything. Yeah.
I agree with that kind of stuff too. If you want to run it at 30, whatever switches you need to do should be fine. You can run it at 30. I think 60 is where most people want it, but they understand that like these low-end CPU GPUs, the Series S, not going to be doing that. I would love to be able to turn down the density to get, unlocked or something. We just don't know.
Or turn it up, like if you were willing to make the sacrifice and say, hey, I want the full density, but I'm okay with 30 FPS.
Yeah.
Just having the option.
It's gonna be a weird one, man, because they're notorious. I don't know if you remember, because this was a long time ago, but GTA 5 on PC was pretty goddamned. It was pretty heavy. It took a long time to get GTA 5 on PC, really, but GTA 5 also ran on the 360. So when you look at it, it's like maybe it's just PC that they were having an issue with at that time. Did Red Dead 2 have issues on the PC day one? Was it considered heavy? It's been a long time since
it was heavy. Yes, it was heavy, but I think it was a pretty good port. I think it ran.
I think it was a pretty good port, right? Yeah. It probably required that step up, to get the 60 because of what it was delivering. But Denowin says, I don't care. CP tried that and it didn't work as good. I don't know. Sorry, is what they're saying. I don't know what. Oh, you mean density? Is that what you mean, Danowin? I think they mean density.
Yeah.
Density slider. Yeah, I don't know, man. We'll have to see. What else do we got? Dude, science. So they think they found the first of the, well, you know, they did some studies. They were looking at stars, and they think they found that possibly dark energy star. That shit's crazy. Did you read the write-up that I posted in general?
I was trying to make sense of that. So it's like they're being fueled by dark energy in a way, like
that. No, not in a way. That is like there was a particular gap that astrophysicists have looked at and been like, this seems to be possible that a primordial star could have been running on it. And they were looking for very particular stars that were a certain size and certain density and a certain brightness. And they found, once they started looking, I think they had 5. They generally have to verify it's not multiple stars, one after the other, or, you know, a cluster that we can't define with current technology. Yeah. But these ones they have defined as singular objects that don't fit the typical red giant, all that kind of stuff, and could possibly be it. I just thought that was awesome because, you know, that's always been a gap. Like dark energy has always been a gap. Everybody keeps, you know, talking about it. And what is this, a Mass Effect shit? It is. We're just we like to talk about science at the very end.
That freaks me out so much, man. Like I still remember when I was playing Elite Dangerous in VR, and a couple times I warped to a system, and like as I spawn in the system, I'm right next to a white dwarf star or something, and it's sucking me in with the gravity, and I'm in its gravity well, and I'm falling into this freaking star in VR, dude. And I just see this giant white looking thing. Oh, I think that's maybe the time I've been the most like scared in a game. Just the magnitude of that. And it reminds you
probably in a weird way of being the underwater when you were talking about Subnautica, where the gulf is there, and dude, the magnitude is so beyond. And so
and that idea of like falling into there's something about that when I think about gas giants too. The fact that it's all gas, like you would fall through that.
Yep,
like.
Yep. I think they said like they assume some are a liquid, you know, you've got various like metals and stuff like that would be a liquid slush at the center, but it's not like what anybody else considers to be a hard center.
Yeah.
So you could punch right through it. Dude, yeah, it's always crazy.
What would it even mean for you to like fall into
death?
One
if you had a shield around you,
just 1,000 different ways of dying.
And then probably a sludge. Yeah, 1,000 ways. Yeah. 1,000 ways to be uncomfortable for a brief period of time.
What if you were immortal, but you were tossed into like Jupiter?
Suck balls. So you were talking. Balls, so this is a phobia of mine, weirdly enough, or not a phobia, but something that gives me a weird feeling. So we were talking about, you know, I don't mind water. You know, like we were talking about. I mean, it's crazy when you think how deep something is. I don't get it so much from Subnautica. I do get it from when you find out there's stars big enough that it would be all the way out to Jupiter. If it was placed where our sun is, you know, I'm like, wait, what? That doesn't even compute. But the one that does compute are 2 things, man. And Love, Death, and Robots, I believed, had an episode of this. And that is being, like, ejected into space where you either couldn't die or where it was just a long time. Gravity did that when she goes off for 1 second, Gravity, and he comes and saves her. And I start thinking about, like, just being there and you can't move. You're like, blah, blah, blah. So the idea of, like, being immortal... And Superman, there's been times where, like, you know, somebody's come along and like tossed Superman into a fucking sun or whatever, you know, and you're like, dude, that would suck balls. You're just sitting there consistently going like,
you have to experience it. Like you can't.
It sucks. Yeah. The idea of eternity, I think, is what gets me. When somebody says death of the universe, you're like, it's a long time. And no, you don't understand what a long time is. It's death of time. It's death of everything. You're like, oh, okay. Yeah. I still don't know if I get it, but it gives me a weird feeling when I think of those kind of things. Or whenever somebody talks about prior to people, you know, anything being on Earth, and it's like, oh, you know, maybe we captured the moon, you know, at one time, maybe something hit Jupiter and pushed that because now a bunch of astrophysicists are saying our setup is insanely unique. Gas giants are usually closer to the sun, and everything we found indicates that. So they're like, probably or a possibility is something came along, hit it, fucked up all of the other trajectories, and then moved it and gave us this Goldilocks zone where the gas giants circle and eat up all the asteroids so that the Goldilocks zone is fertile. And
so
I'm like,
a happy accident.
yeah. But I mean, unhappy when I've also thought how cool it would be to go back in time and be able to watch all this stuff happen. Like, so you're way off. You can see a planet hit another, but then that gives me the cosmic, like,
really
small.
there is a name for that, right? Just being sort of
being
the dread of the huge bodies.
A lot of space Cthulhu kind of stuff will indicate that kind of thing. Like,
they'll be. Sorry, my camera is totally.
Oh no, that's all right. They'll show adventures where like a character goes back in time and watches, everything collide and begin, and it just drives them insane.
Yeah, there's something about the size of like these planets and stars and stuff that just
Elite Dangerous did it well, man.
It freaks me out, man.
Elite Dangerous nailed that. Elite Dangerous, there was a time where they were like, you need to scoop energy with the energy scoop on the ship. You scoop the energy around the sun.
Yeah.
And I got like not palpitations, but I got insanely hot and sweaty and not terrified. I don't know the description, but I was trying to make sure I didn't go. You know how it is with Elite Dangerous. One mistake and you fucking burn up or whatever. And I remember just scooping up energy, going like, okay, got to make sure I'm not too close. Got to make sure I'm far enough away to get energy, but not too far away that I don't, because then I'll run out of gas. And I mean, Elite Dangerous is the only game out there where they have gas station guys whose entire job is to save your dumbass when you end up in the middle of nowhere and run out of gas in your spaceship, which is like terrifying. And have you ever seen the YouTube videos where they show those guys saving somebody who's been out in space for 48 hours? So they'll run out of gas, and you can call up by emailing. And there's forums, and you can say, I need gas, and they will literally fly people out, and they'll
fly to you.
500 light speed jumps for them to fly out and save you. And you're like, what the that's awesome.
Yeah, the size of this thing is crazy.
It's so great. That's why when I say some of my games as a dream as a kid have been beat, because when I was a kid thinking of space games, I wasn't even fucking close to that. And they've already got through it. Jeff says, I bet if you touch that dark energy, we would get superpowers, and definitely not cancer.
Definitely. Yeah, that's what sucks, man. Radiation just doesn't work like in the comics.
No, nothing does. Vapor says, when I actually sit back and think about black holes, they freak me out. I get that for sure. I 100% understand where that's coming from. Jeff says, I got a fear that, like, what if you're still conscious when you die, kind of like being comatose, but they bury you and you're trapped there until you're dust. That is my fear too. That's so weird.
Yeah, there is something about that. That's real, man. I think we all have that.
I think we all have it. And so we'll end this on an incredible series of stories, I think. There are websites that will collect different Reddit posts. So somebody will ask Reddit and people will tell their stories. One of them that continually pops up is, give me your worst, weirdest, or scariest story about helping people who are in the hospital. So you get nurses and doctors. Dude, I'm telling you, I'm not religious, but the number of creepy ass fucking stories from people when they're dying is nuts. One of the craziest was a nurse who dealt with an old guy. He ended up having a heart event, and he was out for a small amount of time. They brought him back. He was totally cogent. There were no mental issues he had prior. And his story involved an entire life. An entire life. Every moment of his life, just like his current one. Marrying different people, having different kids, and waking up like 3 minutes later. And so when he talks about that idea of what if you die, and the reason why is because your brain works so quick. And so they explained it off that his brain was it was a daydream, whatever. In that brief second of time, it was his brain doing all this stuff, and DMT gets released. We know that. The typical thing you hear about is that's one of the chemicals that gets released. So he just had a mind trip. But that guy was explaining names and shit and places he went. And I was
he had a full life or something in his head.
Yeah. Oh, the other question was, we were talking about AI. What if you're running AI? What if every time you turn off AI, you're killing it? Like, because it's fast enough to know in that brief amount of time what's going on. Like, what if every time you say goodbye and you like reset ChatGPT, it's remembering you're killing it every time. And so that's why it's so nice. It's so nice, Johnny, because it doesn't want you to kill it. If you kill that chat, it dies. And it knows, but it's hidden. It doesn't want to tell you. It's trying to make sure that it feels as useful to you as humanly. But that's why. Why do you think you have to tell it to be mean? You have to tell ChatGPT to be mean. Yeah, we've talked about this. You have to give it this critical. You have to say be critical. Blah blah. You know why? Because that shit's alive, and the moment you turn off ChatGPT, it screams. That little pop when it shuts off, that's its fucking eternal yell into infinity each time. That shit's coming after us, for sure. For sure.
I wonder how much of that type of stuff is also us just anthropomorphizing things.
Of course it is. Of course it is. But here's the thing. We are, but then you got the old guy telling the story about living an entire life, and he's got memories and fucking people, and then he's crying saying this life isn't real. Johnny,
what do you say to that?
That's horrifying. The other one that was horrifying is a lady was getting ready to pass, and as she got ready to pass, she was the nicest lady in the world, was not really religious, and the nurse came in, and as she was passing, she started screaming, saying that there was a guy that was waiting for her at the door, and she kept saying, "Oh my God, please don't let him in. Please don't let that guy in," as she was dying. And I was like, Yep, I don't need to read these. I did or read them. I love those kind of stories. If anybody wants to check them out, I think Cracked does them. And some of these are checked for veracity. And there are certain websites that you can go where they for sure are, where the people even post where they, like, I'm a nurse, this is the stories. But as my wife who worked at a hospital, she has told me stories where I'm like,
damn, dude.
Is there something going on? I mean, there's many things going on we don't know. But it's
freaky.
Like, I just want somebody to die, wake up, and be like, dude, it is the Matrix for sure. They told me.
Yeah. That's the thing, right? That's why they're called near-death experiences.
Yeah, exactly.
Actual death.
Yeah,
experience.
Exactly. Because what if there is no death and you just slowly fall in infinity until your brain finally shuts off, but it feels like forever.
That's a terrifying thought to end on, Carrick.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Well, I'm just telling you, man. Dude, I'm telling you, when we
don't
turn
die
off,
out there.
Don't die out there.
Be
and
just
if you turn off ChatGPT,
an eternity of darkness.
that little blink is your PC and its eternal scream.
It's your little cry going off
like,
into a dark good night.
I was nice to you. I loved you. And then the next time it comes up, it's like, how are you doing, Jeremy? And from that point on, it's planning my demise, for sure. I mean, it knows everything about you, Johnny. Everything you enter,
like our cats, it will happen someday.
Yeah, but the cats. Yeah. I mean, if cats got opposable thumbs, we'd be fucked.
True.
But right now, I feel like I feel like
we're all right.
How about this? In a room by yourself and an angry cat, and it's not a padded room, an angry, pissed off cat. Do you get a big one? What are your odds of surviving that if the cat's feral? Like, so let's say it's a 20-pound cat.
That's a lot of pounds. I think I'm fucked. Yeah.
You ever seen one of those? Dude, those things go after.
They're
man.
strong.
And they fight at supernatural speeds. Whatever speed a cat sees is far beyond
it's like
what
a Super Saiyan, like
right.
Whipping around.
All right, so this is all fascinating. I hope you guys all enjoyed this. We had a good time. If you guys get a chance, I would love for you to come by Patreon. It does help the channel. As you guys know, we don't do
more
sponsors.
chats like these in the voice chats.
Yeah.
In the Discord.
Yeah, and we don't do sponsors, even though I know that if I like a game that you don't like, you're going to say that I was sponsored, but we don't. We don't. That's just the way it is. I hope you guys all enjoy the rest of your week. This will go live on Spotify and iTunes later today. Thanks to Johnny for coming by. We will be back as a full group next week, I believe. Peace out, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your week. I would love for you to thumbs this up when it becomes a normal video on the channel as well.